Welcome to my channel, guys. If you're looking for an amazing novel, visit my Patreon page. Your support will help turn this story into an exciting audiobook. Join me on this journey. Chapter 101. Logan. Since we're all here, let's watch the boxing match right here, Alex suggested, gently placing his hand on Anna's head. Anna nodded in agreement, feeling a sense of relief wash over her as she let go of the tension knotting her heart, allowing herself to relax both physically and mentally. Would you like something to drink? Alex inquired, taking a seat beside Anna. I'm feeling a bit chilly, Anna confessed, rubbing her hands together. Despite the heating in the room, the lingering chill seemed to seep into her bones. Let me get you a cup of hot cocoa, Alex offered, giving Anna's head a reassuring pat before rising to fetch the comforting drink. With a steaming cup of cocoa cradled in her hands, Anna felt a sense of warmth spreading not just through her palms, but also through her heart. As the bell rang in the boxing ring, capturing their attention, a man in red found himself knocked down, unable to continue the fight. And look who's here, Alex muttered with a raised eyebrow. Logan? What's he doing here, throwing punches in an underground match? You know him? Anna inquired, taking a sip of her hot cocoa. Of course. He's another mutant, with a personality as fierce as a wolf, and a lifespan of over a century, Alex explained casually, knowing that Logan's destiny lay with the X-Men, even if it hadn't happened yet. Wow, that's quite a long life, Anna marveled, her surprise evident. Meanwhile, in the ring, the man in red was being dragged away, defeated. Any volunteers to take him on? The referee called out, sparking a wave of excitement among the spectators. I'll take him on, a burly, bald man declared, rising to his feet with determination. The announcement elicited cheers from the crowd as the unexpected challenger stepped into the spotlight. Ladies and gentlemen, looks like we have a contender, the referee announced, his voice echoing through the arena. Let the match begin. The burly challenger who stepped onto the field suddenly lunged at Logan, but the damage inflicted meant little to the unyielding Wolverine. Nonetheless, it was enough to stir his fury. In a blur of motion, 3 punches and 2 kicks sent the strongman crashing to the ground. Tonight's undisputed champion remained none other than Wolverine himself. Watching the spectacle unfold, Alex smiled helplessly as he took Anna's hand and said softly, "Let's head back. Next time, you can't just rush out recklessly like that. Ordinary people can be very hostile towards mutants, and it can be dangerous. Promise me you won't do something like this again." All right, Alex, Anna nodded, adopting a contrite expression. After witnessing Logan's triumph in the underground boxing match, Alex escorted Anna back to his manor. Give me a drop of your blood. I'll use it to help counteract your genetic anomaly, but it will take some time to develop the remedy, Alex requested. Anna silently complied, offering Alex a drop of her blood, which he promptly handed over to the system. Before long, a series of potions were synthesized. These served as temporary measures to suppress Anna's ability, as per Alex's instructions. However, the time wasn't ripe yet for a permanent solution. It was crucial for Anna to understand and appreciate the remedy's value. Alex's intentions extended beyond mere gratitude. After administering the potion to Anna, she eagerly consumed it. Post-experiment, her ability was successfully suppressed, bringing immense relief to Anna. Later, Alex teleported to Charles's office. How did it go? Charles inquired. The issue is solved, Alex remarked, relief evident in his voice. But can't you sense Anna's mood? She's distant because of her unique ability. She absorbs memories and skills upon physical contact. She's isolated here. Bullying persists, even at Charles's school, Alex continued, shaking his head at the universal problem. Anna's ability is a challenge to manage. She can't control it unless she's completely covered, he explained, concern lacing his words. Anyone who touches her gets hurt, so naturally, people keep their distance. I respect people's privacy, Charles assured, his tone serious. Anna will stay with me from now on. I've crafted a temporary potion to suppress her ability, but it's not a long-term solution. I need to develop something to address her genetic condition, Alex explained, his expression troubled. With you looking out for her, Anna will thrive, Charles reassured, then shifted the conversation to a more pressing matter. I've discovered that Sabretooth has joined Eric's mutant brotherhood and is targeting Logan. It's unclear if it's personal vendetta or Eric's orders. Then what's your plan? Alex inquired, turning to Charles. I need to determine if Eric's behind this. Scott and the others might not be his opponents, Charles replied with determination. I'll teleport you there, but you owe me for ruining my plans, Alex said with a playful shrug, hinting at a favor owed. End of chapter. Chapter 102. Eric's visit. Charles expressed a desire to meet Wolverine, but Alex had little interest in meeting a man, especially when he could be spending time with his family. After all, what could be more important than being with loved ones? As Alex entered the living room, he was greeted by a surprise cake fight. Reacting quickly, he deftly caught a flying piece of cake before it could splatter on him. "What's going on here?" Alex exclaimed, surveying the scene of creamy chaos with amusement. "It's Jessica's birthday today, so we're having a cake fight," Anya explained gleefully, her face smudged with cream, giving her a mischievous appearance. Before Anya could finish speaking, another cake came hurtling through the air, targeting her face. Kitty, equally covered in cream, retaliated, sparking a playful skirmish. "Hey, no using superpowers to cheat, Kitty," Anna protested, laughter bubbling up as she dodged another cake missile. While they enjoyed their impromptu celebration, Alex couldn't help but feel a twinge of guilt for not knowing it was Jessica's birthday. These little rascals sure know how to have fun. "But why didn't you tell me it was your birthday?" Alex approached Jessica, wrapping his arms around her waist. "I didn't feel like celebrating, you know?" Jessica replied, a hint of annoyance in her tone. "You're turning 1 year older?" Alex teased with a grin, earning a playful swat from Jessica. "Relax, my dear. Keep that youthful spirit. You'll always be 20 to me." Alex planted a kiss on Jessica's cheek before joining in the cake fight, adding to the chaos with gusto. The playful atmosphere continued as the cream-covered girls unleashed a barrage of cake missiles, their laughter mingling with shouts of delight. In the midst of the chaos, Alex couldn't help but feel grateful for the joy and love that surrounded him. The scene in the entire living room was chaotic, with butter cakes scattered everywhere, evidence of a playful cake fight specially organized for the occasion. At night, Alex's expensive suit was smeared with cream, rendering it completely ruined. Yet, Alex paid no mind. He observed the few people playing happily, a genuine smile gracing his face. Suddenly, Alex's expression tightened as he sensed someone approaching the door of his manor. "Why did he come?" Alex frowned, waving his hand to open the manor gate, knowing full well that it wouldn't stop Eric. "Wow, what happened to you here?" Eric looked at the creamy living room, unable to contain his curiosity. "As you can see, a cake fight. I had a great time." Alex opened a bottle of red wine, pouring a glass for Eric and himself. "Well, I guessed it." Eric observed the cream-covered sofa, tugging at the corner of his mouth, and cleared out some clean areas. "How come you have time to come to me today?" "You're usually very busy," Alex inquired softly, taking a sip of red wine. "I came to see Anya." "I need her help," Eric said softly. "Anna? Are you going to harm her?" Alex frowned. He was aware of what the machine needed in the original story. The radiation it emitted was deadly enough for ordinary people. "No, I have observed her. She can absorb more than one kind of power. Mutants are our brothers and sisters. I will not harm any mutant. I have a solution." Eric shook his head and said, "Have you built that machine?" Alex asked after hearing the words. "Yes, since humans are targeting mutants in this way, let them all become mutants so that all problems will be solved," Eric admitted directly and generously. "What about Anna? What are you going to do?" Alex asked. "Anna can absorb more than one kind of ability. She can absorb my ability, start the machine, and then absorb the ability of Sabretooth or Wolverine, which can guarantee that Anna will be fine," Eric said with a slight smile. "No, Eric. I can't promise. Anna is my student, not some goods, and can be transferred at will. What's more, your machine has not been tested, and you don't know the side effects. You should think of another method." Alex shook his head and said lightly, "Alex, you..." Eric sighed. He thought Alex would support him. "Eric, no matter what you are going to do, I will not stop you, but Charles will stop you. You should be careful yourself. Anya misses you very much, so go and see." Alex drank the wine from the glass. "Get up and get up." Eric's expression was shocked. He is a wise man. He can hear the hidden meaning in Alex's words. End of this chapter. Chapter 103. The Butterfly Effect. Eric, with his keen intellect, easily picked up on Alex's words, understanding that his message had been received loud and clear. Alex's assurance that he wouldn't interfere, even if Anna was taken away, only confirmed Eric's belief that he had successfully influenced Alex's decisions. Sometimes, inaction spoke louder than words. A sly smile tugged at Eric's lips as an idea began to form in his mind. With Senator Kelly in mind, Eric pondered the potential side effects of the mutant transformation process. A mouse, conveniently available for experimentation, presented the perfect opportunity to test his theory. Eric's smile widened as he envisioned the implications of Senator Kelly, the staunch advocate against mutants, undergoing a transformation himself. Just as Trask, the architect of the Sentinel program, had ultimately become a mutant, Eric saw the potential for Senator Kelly to undergo a similar transformation. If Senator Kelly were to become a mutant, would he continue to push for anti-mutant policies? Eric doubted it. Just as Trask had abandoned the Sentinel program upon becoming a mutant, Senator Kelly would likely reassess his stance on mutants once he experienced their reality firsthand. With Trask's transformation prompting a shift in focus, Eric was eager to delve deeper into mutant research, particularly the intricacies of self-awakening and mutation. Trask originally discovered the X gene within the human genetic sequence. According to his beliefs, fully activating the X gene in the human body could potentially transform individuals into mutants, specifically targeting those with only X genes. This process wouldn't affect regular humans or existing mutants. Even Alex couldn't have foreseen that his minor intervention would set off such significant ripples, altering history and reshaping the future. If a method existed that could activate the X gene without any side effects, causing no harm to ordinary humans but merely triggering the awakening of the X gene, would Charles still oppose it? It's reasonable to assume that, being pragmatic, Charles would welcome anything beneficial to mutants. Alice Island, once the gateway for United States immigrants, now regains prominence. The United Nations Summit is set to convene here, with leaders from around the world in attendance. Over 200 countries' heads will gather to discuss economic agreements, armament issues, and the global impact of mutants. U.S. congressmen argue that the primary focus should be on reaching a consensus on mutant management. On the television screen, the day's hot topics unfolded. Eric listened intently to the news, his eyes lighting up with anticipation. The United Nations Summit? If these world leaders were to become mutants, who would agree to any absurd clauses on mutant management? Eric ascended the stairs, stealing a glance at the peacefully slumbering Anya. A faint smile graced her lips, hinting at pleasant dreams. Observing her for a moment, Eric tipped his hat before descending the stairs. "Don't you want her to meet you?" Alex, now clad in pajamas, emerged, casting a questioning gaze at Eric. "No, I need to create a better world before appearing in front of my daughter," Eric said with a nonchalant shake of his head. After Eric finished speaking, he walked outside. Early the next morning, Alex turned on the TV, and Congressman Kelly's trip began to be broadcast on it, and the surrounding crowd held signs. The title is actually, "Let Mutant Rot in Prison." Sure enough, human beings are still really forgetful. Have they forgotten the apocalypse catastrophe more than 10 years ago? The Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962, if it weren't for us, I'm afraid the Third World War would break out, let alone the apocalypse catastrophe in 1983. If it weren't for us, these bastards would have been enslaved by apocalypse. Seeing humans actually hold up this brand, she can't help but complain. Alex smiled helplessly. Human beings are the most forgetful, isn't it? End of this chapter. Chapter 104. The Only Way. As Congressman Kelly boarded the helicopter amidst cheers and applause on TV, Eric's intervention caught Alex's attention. With precision and swiftness, Eric's frogman infiltrated the helicopter, swiftly incapacitating Kelly's assistant and taking control of the situation. "Eric never misses a beat," Alex muttered, watching the scene unfold with a shake of his head. It was like watching a theatrical performance, with Eric playing the role of the unexpected plot twist. But beneath the spectacle, Alex recognized a deeper truth. The resentment towards mutants among ordinary people wasn't solely rooted in fear of being harmed. Rather, it stemmed from a more primal emotion: envy. After all, who wouldn't envy those blessed with extraordinary powers? It was a classic case of the grass being greener on the other side. When ordinary individuals witnessed their peers suddenly gaining superhuman abilities, able to manipulate water, breathe fire, soar through the skies, or even achieve immortality, they couldn't help but feel a pang of jealousy. They longed for that power, that freedom from the constraints of normalcy. Initially, envy might manifest as admiration, but over time, it often devolved into bitterness and resentment. And for those unable to attain such powers themselves, that bitterness could easily turn into outright hatred. Of course, Alex acknowledged that not all mutants were saints. There were those who abused their powers, causing harm and chaos. But they were the exception, not the rule. The vast majority of mutants were just ordinary people who happened to possess extraordinary abilities. Even those who gained their powers through awakening were still bound by societal norms and laws. They couldn't simply disregard the rules and wreak havoc without consequence. Mutants like Apocalypse were outliers, exceptions to the norm. But to paint all mutants with the same brush, to label them all as threats deserving of destruction, was not just unjust, it was absurd. The idea that because a few mutants had caused harm, all mutants must be eradicated was a flimsy excuse, a thinly veiled attempt to justify discrimination and violence. And Alex saw through it, recognizing it for what it truly was, a feeble justification for baseless hatred. According to this viewpoint, if an ordinary person harms a mutant, should all mutants retaliate and destroy all humans? Certainly not. Both Eric and Charles recognize the impracticality and moral consequences of such an extreme approach. Mutants are, fundamentally, a type of human. They are akin to different races like blacks, whites, and yellows. Despite Eric's disdain for humans, the fact remains that mutants are born from the human population. While Eric might not hold humans in high regard, many humans possess the X gene, increasing the likelihood of them becoming mutants in the future. My dear, Charles or Eric, who is right? Even if Charles advocates for peaceful coexistence between humans and mutants, over the years, we've seen limited success. Despite doing so much for humans, they still struggle to accept us, Raven inquired with a contemplative tone. Alex smiled faintly, choosing not to provide a direct answer. Expanding beyond mutants, consider the superheroes in the future Avengers. Take the Hulk as an example. While Banner is generally a kind person, witnessing his transformation into the Hulk would likely deter any ordinary person from interacting with him. If Banner were to lose control and turn into the Hulk, causing harm, it raises questions about how one could reason with or communicate with a rampaging Hulk. Even superheroes like Black Widow tread carefully around Banner, fearful of triggering him and unleashing the destructive force of the Hulk. The parallel between the dynamics of mutants and ordinary people echoes the situation between Banner and regular individuals. Most mutants possess abilities that could easily be lethal to ordinary people. How can the two coexist peacefully when the potential for danger is ever present? Knowing the risks associated with these individuals, how can anyone willingly put themselves in harm's way? Therefore, the notion of peaceful coexistence between mutants and ordinary people might have been flawed from the beginning. Unless, like the former Eric, one chooses to live in seclusion and anonymity. However, as long as you show something extraordinary, you will be persecuted by mankind. Just like Anya, who died at the hands of humans in the original work. If you want mutants to have their own rights and interests, you should build a kingdom belonging to mutants just like that alien race, Wakanda. Other countries do not agree? Excuse me, who disagrees? Who will be affected at the beginning of the apocalypse catastrophe? All nuclear bombs will be launched into outer space for you. But mutants are different. Eric, Charles, and Heen can all be used as nuclear weapons to deter the existence of all countries. If I really want to fight for mutants' rights, the only effective way is to establish a country belonging to mutants, Alex pondered. End of this chapter. Chapter 105. Call from SHIELD. Establishing a mutant kingdom may sound straightforward in theory, but in reality, it requires meticulous planning and preparation. With millions of mutants scattered across the globe, considerations such as where to settle and how to govern become paramount. The first challenge lies in selecting a suitable location for the mutant kingdom. With millions of inhabitants needing housing, resources, and infrastructure, the task is daunting. However, with sufficient financial resources, options abound. One possibility is purchasing a large tract of unclaimed land, such as an uninhabited island or even an expanse of ocean, and transforming it into a habitable territory. Alex's mastery over atomic control presents another intriguing possibility. With his abilities, he could theoretically create an entire continent from scratch. However, such a drastic action would undoubtedly draw opposition from governments worldwide, potentially sparking conflict and resistance. Thus, the establishment of a mutant kingdom must be approached with caution. It requires not only a suitable location but also a strategic plan to assert mutant dominance without provoking widespread hostility. One potential avenue is to showcase mutant power in a way that positions them as saviors rather than threats. By leveraging their abilities to address global crises or provide aid in times of need, mutants can garner support and establish themselves as allies to humanity rather than adversaries. However, any attempt to establish a mutant kingdom must tread carefully. Despite their extraordinary abilities, mutants are still a minority in a world predominantly inhabited by humans. Any action perceived as a threat to human dominance could incite backlash and jeopardize the stability of the mutant community. In this delicate balancing act, timing is crucial. Waiting for the right opportunity, such as a major global event like the New York War, could provide the catalyst needed to assert mutant sovereignty without inciting outright hostility. It's a high-stakes game, but with careful planning and strategic maneuvering, the dream of a mutant kingdom could become a reality. Alex was contemplating how to establish the mutant kingdom when the phone suddenly rang. Only his close associates, women, friends, and students, had his mobile number. Who could be calling from an unfamiliar number? Alex harbored some suspicions but still answered the call. Is this Alex, the consultant? A deep male voice emanated from the other end. Consultant. Alex pondered for a moment, then recalled that he might have been a consultant for somewhere in S.H.I.E.L.D. It had been so long that he had almost forgotten about it. Who's asking? Alex inquired suspiciously. Nick Fury, S.H.I.E.L.D. director, came the response from the other end. Alex rubbed his chin, taken aback by how quickly Nick Fury had risen to the position of S.H.I.E.L.D. director. But why did Fury want to talk to him? Consultant Alex, our SHIELD file indicates that you have a close connection with Magneto, and you should understand the gravity of Magneto's actions in kidnapping members of Congress, Nick Fury stated firmly. Alex couldn't help but smirk at the audacity. Was this guy attempting to intimidate him? Huh? And? Alex replied, his tone firm. The abduction of Senator Kelly won't solve anything. If you don't want the divide between mutants and humans to worsen, please persuade Magneto to release Senator Kelly, Nick Fury urged over the phone. What are you going on about? Your signal's terrible. I didn't catch any of that, just a lot of crackling. Oh. The interference is too much. I'll have to hang up. Goodbye. Alex abruptly ended the call, tossing the phone aside and promptly blocking the number. My dear, whose call was that? Raven Bien asked, giving Alex a puzzled look. Was he really pretending a bad signal and hanging up? Just some nuisance, Nick Fury called. You know how it is, Alex shrugged nonchalantly. What a joke, asking him to persuade Eric to release Counselor Kelly, knowing their relationship. Wasn't that utterly foolish? Nick Fury? I remember him. He was a good guy, Raven thought for a while and said lightly. Nick Fury can only be regarded as a code name. The real Nick Fury is a white man. This guy is Nick Fury's son and has used his dad's code name. His real name is Jason, also known as Little Nicholas Fury, Alex explained lightly. Hey, I thought he really was Nick Fury. Raven nodded. S.H.I.E.L.D. Nick Fury looked at the hung-up call with a speechless face and sighed. He had already expected the result, didn't he? Nick glanced at the files on the table. They were all records about the Cuban Missile Crisis and the Apocalypse catastrophe. They clearly recorded the files about Alex, Eric, and Charles. Obviously, the relationship between these three people is very good. Add more people to search for Magneto's premises. If you can contact Professor X, we can provide help and let him find Magneto's base. Nick Fury issued an order. End of this chapter. Chapter 106. Trisk and Eric. Eric took Senator Kelly to his base and looked at Senator Kelly indifferently, saying, We are mutants, with super abilities. It's natural for you to be afraid of us. Humans fear what they don't understand. But don't worry, I won't harm you. Don't be afraid of me. What do you want from me? Senator Kelly struggled, watching Eric closely and asking loudly. I intend to make you one of us, Eric replied with a sneer, leading Senator Kelly to a large silver instrument made entirely of metal. The instrument resembled a two-story pavilion with a diameter of more than 2 meters and was entirely made of metal. Eric stepped onto the lower platform of the instrument and manipulated it to ascend to the upper level. There, he stood in a semicircular steel beam buckled with a thick steel ring. How sure are you? Eric asked Trisk, who was standing nearby. I am 100% certain that I can turn him into a mutant, Trisk responded confidently. Good! Eric exclaimed. Eric placed his hands on the 2 ring handles of the instrument. Suddenly, the discs on the semicircular steel beam began to light up one by one, and the massive rigid ring surrounding Eric started to rotate rapidly. A translucent, mercury-like streamer rose in the ring, and the instrument began to absorb Magneto's abilities. The pain of Eric's X gene being squeezed out distorted his face. The mercury-like translucent streamer unfurled from the upper and lower sections of the device. Initially, the blooming flowers unfurled slowly, but as the 2 clusters of silver light made contact and merged, the expansion suddenly accelerated 100-fold, transforming into an arctic tide of light. Like a curtain, it surged outwards in all directions, gradually enveloping the entire island. Inside the machine, Eric grimaced in pain, his features contorted. Senator Kelly, surrounded by the halo, also let out a scream. Soon, the halo dissipated. Trisk swiftly aided Eric to his feet. Trisk, how did it go? Eric inquired. Congressman Kelly lacks the X gene in his body. However, since we injection blood containing X gen into him, there's a certain amount of X gene present, forcing him to undergo mutation. His abilities are very weak, and I'm unsure if there are any side effects, Trisk reported. Take him down. He's making the scene tense, Eric commanded, gesturing for Sabretooth to assist Senator Kelly. Trisk, are you confident that this device can catalyze mutation in mutants with the X gene without any side effects? Eric queried. There's absolutely no issue. It's a problem I've resolved after years of research. As long as they possess the X gene, this device will trigger a mutation. But its range is limited, Trisk explained. That's sufficient. Remember what the news reported? At the summit of world leaders, over 200 heads of state gathered, and there are bound to be individuals with the X gene among them. Even if it's just a small portion, that'll do, Eric remarked casually. If you can truly achieve it, your actions will undoubtedly be lauded by all mutants, Trisk chuckled. Hope that day will come soon. Eric said with a smile. The two old people smiled. Eric has been fighting for mutants almost all his life. He is a respectable pioneer. Because it was related to the fact that Mr. Kelly was injected with blood containing gene X, he was forced to change as a side effect of Mutant. Eric took Senator Kelly seriously and completely eliminated the possibility of Senator Kelly's escape. Trisk, how is he? As a machine master, Eric has no knowledge of genetics. On the contrary, it is Trisk, although he sells arms, he is quite accomplished in genetics. He is dead, and all the cells are necrotic. The X gene conflicts with his original genes, but it doesn't matter. I have extracted important data. The experiment was completed in constant improvement. He also died properly. He shook his head and said lightly. Very good. Next, you only need to catch Anna and Logan. The summit will start soon. We can't miss this opportunity like 4.8. Eric nodded and said. Anna is Alex's student. Aren't you afraid of him getting angry? Trisk asked. Believe me, Alex is also willing to see this scene. This is his acquiescence. And we will not endanger her life. Eric said lightly. What are you going to do? Anna lives in Alex's manor. Trisk asked, looking at Eric. Anna goes to school at Charles's academy. We just need to trick her out. The future belongs to us mutants. End of this chapter. Chapter 107. The arrival of SHIELD. Anna walked into Charles's school with Kitty, Jean, and Storm. Alex had taken in many mutants here, but compared to the hundreds of mutants in Charles's school, it seemed too few. Alex didn't bother to learn that Charles was creating a school and simply let them study in Charles's school. It's also very close anyway. Alex stood at the door, looked at the back of the four people walking away, smiled slightly, and Eric contacted him. The machine has been made, and it has no effect on ordinary humans. It only catalyzes humans with the X gene and does not have any side effects. Alex also asked Senator Kelly what happened. Eric said that he was injected with blood containing the X gene of the same blood type, and then the machine was used to catalyze the X gene awakening. In the end, the cell conflict turned into a pool of clear water. Alex shook his head. Okay, it turned out to be a puddle of clear water like the original book. But a congressman disappeared, but it can shock the United States. Alex looked at Charles's academy, and the people from SHIELD had already gone to Charles's school. Therefore, the members of the United States Congress were abducted by mutants and belonged to the scope of the mission of S.H.I.E.L.D. My dear, what's the matter? Emma, dressed in professional attire, was obviously preparing to go to Congress. SHIELD people are going to find Eric, but I doubt whether these agents can find Eric. Alex smiled faintly. The congressman was kidnapped. This is indeed a major event, but unfortunately, I can't help. Emma said regretfully. Well, you have helped a lot. You should go to host the meeting. Alex pointed to the time on his watch and chuckled softly. My dear, goodbye. Emma glanced at the time, kissed Alex, quickly entered the garage, and drove her red Ferrari to the Congress. The smile on the corner of Alex's mouth slowly faded. Remay walked to his side and asked, My dear, are you really going to watch Anna being kidnapped by Eric? Eric mentioned that this won't harm Anna, and you don't want to witness the proliferation of one's own allies? Alex chuckled softly. Unsure if Eric could succeed, perhaps he should lend a hand. While many people carry the X gene, not all can awaken their abilities. Otherwise, with over 7 billion individuals in the world, how could there be only 1 million mutants? Even among the heads of over 200 countries, there are likely only a handful with the X gene. Alex gazed at Charles's school, his eyes seemingly penetrating vast distances as he observed the situation there. At the entrance of Charles's school, a car pulled up, and two individuals disembarked. One was Nick Fury, and the other was the young Phil Coulson. Wow, are these mutants? Phil Coulson couldn't help but exclaim as he surveyed the school, teeming with hundreds of individuals. Certainly. Remember to be respectful. We're here to meet Professor X, Nick Fury instructed Phil Coulson, adjusting his collar. Yes, sir, Phil Coulson replied, following Nick Fury as they entered Charles's academy. With SHIELD's resources, locating Charles's school wasn't a challenge. Inside the school, many mutant children showcase their abilities, some consciously and others unconsciously, leaving Phil Coulson in awe. For most ordinary people, there are only a handful of mutants that they have actually seen. As for why they are resisting the variants, it is nothing more than a question. Everyone is boycotting Mutant. If we don't boycott it, will it be special? Even the SHIELD high-level agent is the first time to see so many mutants gathered together. Nick Fury looked at these mutant children. His expression was a little surprised, but he quickly recovered. He is not one of those foolish people, and he is not easily agitated by the congressman's tongue. He did not reject mutants and even wanted to gather mutants to form a special organization. There are also many mutants in S.H.I.E.L.D. He has worked with mutants before, knowing how much mutants can contribute to some special tasks. For example, Raven can transform into the appearance of any person, whether it is voice, fingerprints, or pupils, it can be changed. When S.H.I.E.L.D. was first established, she joined S.H.I.E.L.D. She is one of S.H.I.E.L.D.'s veterans, and they generally don't disturb these veteran-level people without major issues. In SHIELD's files, there are many female agents, but the only female agent who can be compared with Raven is Natasha Romanoff of the former Soviet Union, known as Black Widow. End of this chapter. Chapter 108. Charles and SHIELD. Compared with the Raven's shape-shifting ability to steal intelligence, Black Widow is renowned for her reputation, relying on her beauty to obtain valuable information. Both are female agents with equivalent abilities. If Raven was not a mutant, as a female agent, it would be easiest for her to rely on her beauty to obtain confidential information. Nick Fury shook his head, dispelling all distracting thoughts from his mind. This time, he came to Charles seeking help to locate Eric. For the people at Charles's school, SHIELD still evoked some fear. In the original apocalypse catastrophe, Cairo was transformed into pyramids, resulting in the deaths of millions of people. The Cairo pyramids still stood as a reminder of that catastrophic event. Everyone who experienced the apocalypse catastrophe remembered how Charles's abilities were used by Apocalypse to convey his messages worldwide. The inexplicable launch of nuclear bombs was attributed to Charles being controlled by Apocalypse, highlighting the immense power of Charles's abilities. The details of how the apocalypse catastrophe ended remained unclear, even in SHIELD's files. No one knew how Apocalypse ultimately met his demise. It had been discovered that the two mutants, Charles and Eric, were extremely powerful individuals. One founded a mutant school, while the other founded the Mutant Brotherhood, which focused on different goals. Although the Mutant Brotherhood had been relatively quiet for a while, it was evident that Charles was associated with the Alliance camp, while Eric was linked to the opposing side. SHIELD. Charles sensed the arrival of the organization through his psychic abilities. He was well aware of SHIELD's reputation and importance. Naturally, we can't neglect them, Charles remarked. Scott, come with me to greet the director of S.H.I.E.L.D., Charles instructed as he rose from his seat and headed downstairs. Despite his immense strength, he remained a civilian without any official position. Regardless of Nick Fury's purpose for visiting, it couldn't be ignored. Professor X. Nick Fury greeted with a slight smile as Charles approached. What brings Chief Nick here? Charles inquired with a smile. It's something quite serious. Senator Kelly was abducted by Magneto. Do you have any information, Professor? Nick Fury asked, his expression grave. Congressman Kelly taken by Eric? When did this occur? Charles inquired, his expression turning serious. Just yesterday morning, Nick Fury replied. Yesterday morning? That's troubling. Is there any way I can assist? Charles responded, understanding the gravity of the situation. It's simple. Help us locate Kelly's whereabouts. As a member of Congress, it's imperative that we find him quickly, Nick Fury stated succinctly. Of course. Follow me, Charles said, leading Nick Fury into the school. The various facilities opened up, revealing the location of the brainwave amplifier. Nick Fury marveled at the high-tech equipment surrounding him. The professor's setup here is more impressive than what we have at S.H.I.E.L.D., he remarked. It's just a jest. Our space may be limited, but we strive for precision. It's not like S.H.I.E.L.D., which caters to thousands, Charles replied with a smile, adjusting the brainwave amplifier. The terrifying spiritual power spread out instantly, looking for Senator Kelly's trace. After searching for a while, Charles looked very serious. After Charles let out a sigh of relief, he took off the brainwave amplifier and looked at Nick Fury, and said, Unfortunately, I can't find Representative Kelly's brainwaves anymore. Can't find it? What does this mean? Nick Fury asked quickly. It means that Senator Kelly may have been killed. Charles also looked concerned. He understood Eric. Although he harbors resentment towards humans, he hasn't reached such an extreme point because Eric knows that mutants evolved from humans. How can you kill humans now? Or a member of Congress? Dead? Nick Fury's expression changed, and his tone became stern. Killing members of Congress will not make humans accept mutants, but will only fuel hatred towards mutants. You should be aware of this. No, based on what I know about Eric, he would not do such a stupid thing. It may be caused by other reasons, Charles explained. It doesn't matter if it is Magneto or not, but I can't ignore it, Professor. Thank you for your help. I will let people increase their search, find Magneto, and arrest him. I hope you can support, Professor. Nick Fury said to Charles. Nodded, and walked out directly with Phil Coulson. End of this chapter. Chapter 109. Iceman Bobby. Charles observed Nick Fury's departure, his expression tight with concern. He couldn't shake off the conversation he'd had with Alex earlier. Eric's mission to transform humans into mutants seemed to have hit a snag with Senator Kelly's abduction. It's not looking good, Professor. Kurt, the blue-skinned mutant, burst into the room, his expression anxious. Anna's gone. What? What happened? Charles felt a surge of worry. Bobby and I got hurt because of Anna's touch. We're both shaken up. Anna apologized to us, saying that Professor Alex had given her a potion to temporarily control her powers. She'll be back to normal soon, Kurt explained, his voice rapid with concern. That's a relief. It clears up some of the suspicion. Are you and Anna still friends? Charles inquired, puzzled. If she apologized, why did she run off again? It was all fine, but Bobby lost it and started hurling insults at Anna. She got mad and ran off, Kurt explained. Bring Bobby here. I need to talk to him. I already know that Anna's abilities are beyond her control, and she's apologized. Why would you be so mean to her? Charles asked, shaking his head. He couldn't help but notice the contradiction in the children's actions. Bobby was soon summoned to the room. Charles sorted through his thoughts before addressing Bobby with a measured tone. Bobby, you're aware that Anna's ability isn't entirely within her control. She's also offered her apologies to you. Why continue to speak ill of her? Bobby appeared perplexed as he tried to articulate his thoughts. Look, I do have some positive feelings towards Anna. Even though my last episode was triggered by her ability glitch, causing my genes to act up and sending me into shock, I don't hold it against her. Not everyone can master their abilities at will. Charles found himself deep in contemplation. Bobby's sincerity was apparent. Could it be that someone with shape-shifting abilities, akin to Raven, had taken on Bobby's form? Did you cross paths with Kurt recently? Charles inquired. Absolutely. Anna offered her apologies to both Kurt and me. But Professor, where did Anna disappear to? I didn't catch sight of her, Bobby questioned, a puzzled expression on his face. After a moment of reflection, Charles turned to Bao and probed. Do you recall when Anna apologized to you? I can't seem to recall much about that, Bobby admitted, scratching his head. I see. It's possible someone has manipulated your thoughts using telepathy to make you believe that. Charles suddenly realized what might be happening. Initially dismissed as a minor disagreement, Charles couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to the situation than met the eye. Eric, haven't you relented yet? Charles muttered under his breath, a furrow forming on his brow. As far as he knew, himself, Alex, Jean, and Emma were the only individuals with psychic abilities. With the recent surge in mutant activity, it's hardly surprising that another mutant with mental powers has emerged. Charles speculates that around 80% of this occurrence can be attributed to Eric. All right, I get it. You're not to blame for this, you were under someone's control, and Anna got upset, Charles admitted, shaking his head as he disclosed the truth to Bobby. Iceman Bobby, still bewildered, couldn't comprehend what had just happened. How was he manipulated by others? Despite his confusion, he decided to step out and unravel the mystery. After a moment of silence, Charles tapped into his psychic abilities to locate Anna. He summoned the X-Men, briefed them on the situation, and sent them out to retrieve Anna. Observing the commotion at Charles's school, Alex smirked and shook his head, amused by the audacity of someone trying to harm Anna. It seemed like the threat was now neutralized. Anna was kept away from Iceman, and Alex extended his senses to track down the young girl. He quickly located her at a station, having purchased a ticket to leave New York. Utilizing his psychic powers, Charles also pinpointed Anna's whereabouts and instructed the X-Men to bring her back. Before Charles's psychic connection could reach Eric, Alex withdrew his psychic power, leaving the next steps to be his concern. Eric's only intention was to exploit Anna's abilities, and he assured Alex that no harm would come to her. Alex's role was simple: provide Anna with the perfect potion, and once Eric's plan succeeded, and bring her back. End of this chapter. Chapter 110. Captured. Anna stood in the train station's waiting area, her face clouded with sadness as she clutched her ticket. She was wrapped up tightly, leaving only her striking face visible, not a single inch of skin exposed. Bobby was right. Even as a mutant, I'm a monster. I absorb others' abilities and memories. I shouldn't be going to school. I should find a secluded spot in the woods and just end it all, Anna muttered to herself, lost in her thoughts. She remembered her brief but happy time at Alex Manor. Everyone, from Katie and Anya to Jean and Arolo, and even Professor Alex and his 3 wives, had been kind to her. Alex had even promised to help her overcome her powers defect. But Bobby's words had planted seeds of doubt in her mind. Could Gene X truly fix her inherent flaw? Even if the current medicine suppressed her powers, would it ever truly solve her problem? Was Alex lying to her? Despite her doubts, Anna still hoped for comfort, for someone to offer her a drink and take her back, just like last time in Canada. Her mutant heart was fragile, especially after going through this situation twice. But this time, her wish seemed destined to remain unfulfilled. If Alex hadn't intervened, Eric wouldn't have dared to try and catch Anna. Both Eric and Charles knew the extent of Alex's strength. As the train's arrival drew nearer, Alex still hadn't shown up. Anna's spirits sank even lower. Suddenly, a whistle pierced the air. A young man, dressed in a non-traditional style, approached Anna. "You look down. How about we have some fun together?" he suggested. "Go away," Anna snapped, repulsed by his approach. "Hey," the man persisted, reaching out to grab Anna's hand. "You're wearing gloves? You must be a clean freak. I wonder what you'd look like if you got them dirty." He expressed his desire to grasp Anna's hand, but she quickly recoiled, attempting to leave, only to have her gloves torn off in the process. "Stay away from me." Anna's gaze hardened as she confronted the unconventional-looking youth, her intent clear as she reached for her gloves. Unperturbed, the youth paid no heed, seizing Anna's wrist despite her protests. "Let go of me." Anna's voice trembled with fear as she watched the youth's grip tighten, realizing the perilous consequence of physical contact without her suppressant gloves. Panic surged through her as she comprehended the risk of absorbing memories and abilities from others, especially without the means to control it. In the blink of an eye, the youth's expression contorted in agony, collapsing to the ground as if struck by a sudden affliction. Anna swiftly retrieved her gloves, fleeing in terror. As she boarded the approaching train, she hastily donned the gloves once more, her eyes clouded with distress. "I warned you not to touch me." Thanks to Alex's intervention, Anna's mind was shielded from harmful memories and personal experiences, ensuring that her absorption was limited to knowledge alone. This time, she wouldn't lose herself amidst the influx of foreign recollections. "Professor, I believe we've located Anna," Psylocke reported through the communicator, observing Anna's hurried entrance into a train carriage. "Bring Anna back as soon as possible. I'm concerned that Eric might forcibly take her away," Charles urged with a sense of urgency. "No, Professor, they're already here," Psylocke informed, her gaze fixed on Angel with a pair of metallic wings. "I'll be there shortly," Charles assured Psylocke, already sprinting towards the station. Inside the carriage, Anna observed the mutants engaged in a fierce battle outside, panic evident on her face. Suddenly, the roof of the carriage burst open, and a figure made a slow entrance. None other than Magneto himself. Upon spotting Anna, Eric gracefully gestured, preventing the vial of medicine on his waist from flying out. Instead, he delicately inserted it into Anna's vein, causing her to swiftly succumb to a deep slumber. "Next up is Logan. Let Logan come to us on his own," Eric declared as he picked up the now sleeping Anna, making his way out of the carriage. Witnessing Magneto's success, Angel, Frogman, Sabretooth, and others immediately parted ways with the X-Men, joining Magneto's side. Following Charles's orders, the X-Men lost their fervor for the fight, choosing to observe as Magneto walked out with Anna. End of this chapter. Chapter 111. Eric vs. Shield. Kevin, the chief of the police station, was looking forward to a quiet evening, with plans to enjoy some hot cocoa and donuts. However, his good mood was abruptly shattered by the ringing phone. "Hello, this is the police station." "What's the matter?" Kevin answered. "There's been a mutant attack at the train station," the voice on the other end reported. "What?" Kevin's expression darkened. As a staunch anti-mutant, he felt obligated to confront these creatures. "Is it at the train station?" "I'm on my way," he replied, preparing to lead the police station to the scene. But as he was about to leave, he ran into a man dressed in a suit. "Hey, watch where you're going, man." Don't slow me down, Kevin snapped. My name is Phil Coulson, and S.H.I.E.L.D. is handling this matter, Phil responded, showing Kevin his credentials. All right, Kevin stammered after reading the document. He realized that Phil Coulson was a figure of immense power, well beyond his jurisdiction. Phil Coulson orchestrated the special forces to encircle the entire police station, with every firearm, including sniper rifles, trained on the station's entrance. Eric emerged, flanked by a multitude of armed special forces. Quite the welcoming committee, Eric remarked, glancing at the formidable assembly outside. Stay still, hands up, and place them on your head, Coulson commanded. Magneto, you're completely surrounded. Surrender now. Coulson led the charge, positioning the special forces to guard the station's gate. The police were ill-equipped to handle mutants of this caliber. Only the military stood a chance. This is all futile, Eric shook his head, extending his hand to effortlessly lift the armored car before him. With a subtle gesture, it contorted as if manipulated by an invisible force, rendering it a twisted heap of metal, a grim reminder of the potential consequences for those too slow to react. One of them surely paid the price for underestimating Eric's capabilities. Whoa! Incredible! Numerous special forces marveled at the sight of the armored car reduced to scrap, their astonishment echoing through the air. Under Magneto's control, the mangled remains of the armored car levitated above the surrounding vehicles, then were abruptly released, crashing down onto the target below. As the armored vehicles were systematically dismantled, the tight defense crumbled, exposing glaring vulnerabilities. After several vehicles were reduced to wreckage, the special forces redirected their focus, aiming their weapons at Eric. With a smirk, Eric gestured, causing all the firearms to soar uncontrollably toward him. The guns abruptly changed direction, now aimed at their original owners, safeties released, and returned to a state of readiness. A perplexed silence fell over the special forces as they exchanged uncertain glances. The sheer inhumanity of this power left Coulson feeling utterly powerless. It only fueled his determination to assemble individuals with formidable abilities, envisioning an effective response to superability crimes. Eric, surveying the guns in the hands of the bewildered special forces, couldn't help but smirk coldly. Useless humans and weapons, he scoffed. Suddenly, Sabretooth, positioned beside Eric, seized Eric's neck and gruffly uttered, "Enough, Eric." On the other side, Frogman also addressed Eric, stating, "Let them go." Even Angel, hovering in the air with metallic wings, had her sights set on Eric. It became apparent that they were all under the influence of Charles's psychic power. Observing his controlled subordinates, Eric scanned the surroundings and declared coldly, "Charles, show yourself if you've got the nerve." Inside a car, Charles sighed helplessly. He took control of Sabretooth and inquired, "Why do you want to capture her?" "She's a student of Alex, you know." "Charles, can't you read my thoughts?" Eric responded confidently, assured by Alex's approval. Even if Anna were kidnapped, Eric believed there would be no issue as long as she remained unharmed. Charles, unfazed, countered, "If you want to save her, you'll have to go through me." "But what's the point? The law has already marked you as a threat to humanity." "It won't end like that," Charles asserted. "Then prove it." "Kill me or let me go," Eric retorted, directing a cold gaze at Sabretooth. End of this chapter. Chapter 112. The One-Eyed Man. Charles sat in the car, his expression a mix of frustration and indecision. He shook his head, unable to proceed or agree with Eric's plan. He controlled the Frogman, advanced slowly towards the human side. Eric's demeanor turned cruel in an instant. Eric seized control of a nearby gun and squeezed the trigger. A bullet whizzed through the air towards Nick Fury. Reacting swiftly, Nick Fury turned and raised his hand. The bullet halted just inches from his left eye, eliciting gasps of horror from the surrounding crowd who instinctively sought cover. The tension was palpable as the bullet hovered dangerously close to Nick Fury's eye. A testament not to Eric's mercy but to Charles's intervention. Eric manipulated the bullet, bringing it closer to Nick Fury's eye as he taunted, "Feeling brave, Charles?" The scene escalated as more guns were loaded, the metallic clicks echoing ominously in the air. Charles closed his eyes in resignation, realizing he needed assistance. Perhaps Alex could help. After all, Anna was his student. "You can't dodge them all," Eric sneered, scanning the area as if searching for Charles. Ah! The bullet breached Nick Fury's left eye in that moment, a grim testament to Eric's cruelty, with Charles as his unwilling audience and Nick Fury as his hapless victim. Sabretooth stood beside Eric, his grip loosening around Eric's neck as if in a daze, oblivious to the recent events unfolding around them. Eric noticed Sabretooth's actions and wasted no time in speaking up. "Charles, your Achilles' heel lies in your compassion," he remarked, his tone sharp with conviction. If it weren't for that soft heart of yours, we'd be in a much better position now. As the dust settled, Nick Fury found himself with a bullet piercing his left eye, rendering him a one-eyed leader among men. Charles watched Eric depart, a heavy sigh escaping his lips as he began to reflect on the state of the X-Men and their allies. "I'll head to Alex's manor. You should return home," Charles declared, taking charge and steering towards their next destination. Arriving at the grand estate, Charles was welcomed by the familiar face of the manor's butler, who ushered him inside without hesitation. "Professor, it's rather late. What brings you here?" Katie, accompanied by Anya, inquired with genuine surprise upon spotting Charles within the manor's halls. "I've come to see Alex." "Go on and enjoy yourselves," Charles replied warmly, flashing a reassuring smile as he directed them to continue their adventures. With Katie and Anya disappearing into the depths of the estate, Charles turned to face Raven, who approached with a curious expression. "Charles, what brings you here at this hour?" Raven questioned, concern evident in his voice. "I've come for Alex. Anna has been captured by Magneto," Charles explained, his tone grave with determination. "What?" Raven couldn't suppress a startled roar, her eyes locking onto Charles as she exclaimed. "You claimed you just escaped from home. How did Magneto manage to catch up with you?" "We fell right into Eric's trap. When S.H.I.E.L.D. approached me, a mutant wielding spiritual powers took control of Bobby and provoked Anna. We had already located Anna, but Eric got there first." "One step ahead," Charles sighed, shaking his head in frustration. "And then?" Raven inquired eagerly, fixing her gaze on Charles. "S.H.I.E.L.D. and I intercepted Eric. He used the lives of the special forces sent by S.H.I.E.L.D. as leverage. Nick Fury even lost an eye in the process," Charles explained solemnly. "Now, I need to reach out to Alex. He's the one who can persuade Eric to listen, and time is of the essence," Charles added with a sense of urgency. "I hate to break it to you, Charles, but you're a bit late. Alex has already figured out how to optimize and compensate for Anna's abilities. It'll take at least a day, and he specifically warned us not to disturb him," Raven chimed in, a hint of helplessness in her tone. "This?" Charles looked dumbfounded, wondering if it was pure coincidence or a deliberate avoidance on Alex's part. Upon reflection, it seemed uncanny. Not long after Anya joined him, 2 incidents like this had occurred. This time, Eric was even captured. It was understandable that Charles would be frustrated. "Well, I'll do what I can to save Anna," Charles sighed, shaking his head helplessly. He turned and walked out of Alex's manor, acknowledging that, whether or not Alex was genuinely working on a potion to help Anna, he was their best hope for her rescue. End of this chapter. Chapter 113. The Future of the World. After watching Charles leave, Raven shook her head, sauntered into the house, and found Alex basking in his own enjoyment. With a playful grin, she quipped, "If Charles catches wind of your cozying up to everyone, will you be in a huff?" "Haha, why should I care? Charles can be quite dense," Alex retorted with a nonchalant shrug and a chuckle. "Dear, aren't you going to lend a hand to Anna? She's in quite a dire situation. And what about that potion you've been tinkering with for ages?" Jessica interjected softly, her concern evident in her voice. "Do you not want to witness Eric's triumph?" Alex countered with a subtle smile. He made no move to deter Eric's actions, even facilitating his endeavors. As for his purported research and other excuses, they were merely a smokescreen. Even Charles was aware of it. Charles found himself in a bind. While he understood Eric's motivations for the mutants, he feared the chaos that would ensue if world leaders were to undergo mutation. It was a scenario Charles, with his compassionate nature, dreaded. His visit to Alex was an act of desperation, a quest to gauge Alex's stance. As Alex had remarked, theirs was not a partnership of assistance. Yet, by refraining from actively supporting Eric or aligning with his cause, Alex conveyed his message loud and clear. Raven, Emma, and Jessica wore solemn expressions. Hailing from a different era, they had witnessed the tumultuous relationship between mutants and humans, one that hadn't reached such dire straits. Despite their efforts in saving the Earth during the Cuban Missile Crisis and averting a Third World War, they found themselves betrayed by humanity. At a time when mutants were still largely unknown, their sacrifices went largely unnoticed. In recent years, the mutant population has surged, sparking intensified conflicts with humans due to abilities beyond their control. Take Cyclops and Anna, for instance. Powers like theirs can be unpredictable and dangerous. Seeing heads of state turn into mutants would be quite the spectacle, but will it only worsen tensions between humans and mutants? Raven pondered with a wry smile. "Scared?" Alex retorted with a hint of amusement. "Ooh, someone's feeling bold," Emma quipped, her laughter dancing through the air. Not bold, just realistic. Mutants aren't to be underestimated. A 5th-level mutant could wipe out this planet without breaking a sweat, Alex remarked casually. Meanwhile, as the UN summit unfolded on TV, Jessica provided commentary. At 9 in the evening, the United Nations summit commenced, a 2-hour affair that gripped the world's attention. Elsewhere, Eric meticulously set up his device atop the Statue of Liberty, overlooking the island hosting the summit. Hovering above, a helicopter bristled with armed soldiers, a stark reminder of the tensions below. On a freighter nearby, Eric secured Anna within its confines, his gaze drifting to Lady Liberty in awe. "Magnificent," he murmured. Anna, unfazed, replied, "I've seen it before." Having crossed paths at Alex's estate, Anna recognized Eric, her composure intact. "I know you. You've been to Professor Alex's manor. You were friends with him. So why abduct me?" she inquired, puzzled. "Haha, for Mutant's future," Eric chuckled, his hand gently resting on Anna's head like that of a caring elder. "But, what does Mutant's future have to do with me?" Anna's expression was a mix of confusion and curiosity as she looked up at Eric. "Your ability is extraordinary, capable of absorbing other people's abilities. And I've created a machine that catalyzes the X gene within the human body, transforming individuals into mutants. But here's the catch. Only I can activate this machine. If mutants are mass-catalyzed, the machine will drain my life force," Eric explained candidly, not mincing words. "So, you're suggesting you'll sacrifice me?" Anna's question hung in the air, heavy with implications. No, Eric waved his hands, dispelling the notion. "Every mutant is like family to me. I won't sacrifice anyone easily. Sabretooth, one of my subordinates, possesses the self-healing ability. The Wolverine, too, possesses this power. If you absorb the genes of either of them, they'll die. But with 2 individuals, it's different. You won't die, and my plan will succeed. Care to give it a try?" Eric's smile was almost persuasive. In the future, mutants will thrive in this world. They won't face discrimination. They'll only evoke envy. Eric's eyes sparkled with fervor as he painted a picture of his ideal future. It seemed within reach, this vision of a utopian mutant society. Anna's eyes brightened momentarily, then dimmed. What about Mutant's world? Even if she were a part of it, would she be accepted, or would she only be seen as a monster? End of this chapter. Chapter 114. The Final Showdown. "No, I refuse." Anna shook her head firmly. "Why? My dear child, the future belongs to us. We should stride boldly among ordinary people, not skulk in the shadows like mice in gutters. It only requires a bit of effort and endurance to bring about this change. We are the future of human race. Why resist?" Eric regarded Anna with a perplexed expression, urging her to reconsider. "Resistance? Even if you resist, it's futile. You'll comply whether you want to or not. But even if you resist, it won't matter, because I won't let such an opportunity slip through my fingers. Take her to the machine." Eric rose from his seat, unyielding, and instructed Sabretooth. Without hesitation, Sabretooth whisked Anna away into the depths of the Statue of Liberty, securing her within the machine under his watchful eye. Eric ascended to the torch, fixating his gaze on the site of the United Nations summit. A spark of fervor ignited in his eyes. The goal he had pursued for decades was on the verge of realization. The anticipation thrilled him to his core. With all preparations in place, he awaited Charles's arrival with Wolverine. "Trisk, will the radiation from the device cover all of New York?" Eric inquired, turning to Trisk beside him. "Absolutely. Everything has been arranged since early morning. The United Nations summit is right within our reach. The human genomes will be transformed into mutants for the first time, spreading across New York within 15 minutes, Trisk affirmed confidently. "So it's as simple as snagging Wolverine first and then holding off Charles for 15 minutes, Eric proposed. "Exactly," Trisk affirmed with a nod. "I've temporarily weakened Anna's super ability, handing the reins over to you for now," Eric explained. "Once we deal with these nuisances, we can proceed," Trisk agreed. "Indeed. The X-Men are quite the annoyance. Though I trust my men, it's prudent to eliminate these bothersome X-Men first as a precaution," Eric remarked, gazing out at the misty waters. As if on cue, a menacing magnetic storm erupted, lifting the low-altitude X-fighter and slamming it to the ground. "What in the world?" Logan emerged from the wreckage, blood trickling from his forehead, yet swiftly healing. "Give up, Eric, otherwise your actions will turn New York into a haven for superpowered criminals," Charles stated, his expression conflicted, as he descended from the fighter. "Give up? Never. This is just the beginning, Charles. You can't thwart me," Eric declared, shaking his head. I can and I will, Charles asserted, fixing his gaze on Eric. Relying on these puny little guys? Eric chuckled, glancing at the X-Men gathered behind Charles. You don't stand a chance against me, Eric continued confidently, extending his hand to imprison the X-Men in a cage of copper pieces. Psylocke found herself tightly bound, while Scott was ensnared, unable to unleash his laser powers against the starry sky backdrop. With eyes closed, Charles unleashed his formidable psychic prowess, seizing control of all the mutants aligned with Magneto. Eric shook his head. I won't be caught off guard again. With swift precision, steel bindings ensnared Angel, Sabretooth, and Toad, anchoring them firmly to the foundation. Charles found himself tightly restrained by steel pipes, his predicament clear. Eric's ability held undeniable superiority. Without removing Eric's helmet, resistance seemed futile. A faint smile graced Eric's lips as he addressed Wolverine Logan. Logan, it's been too long. Once again, I require your unique ability. With a casual gesture, Sabretooth and Wolverine were brought face to face. Eric approached Charles, his tone tinged with authority. Charles, behold the future of our world. Eric, you're making a grave mistake. Charles's protest was cut short as iron silenced his words. Bound and silenced, Charles was propelled behind Eric, soaring toward the Statue of Liberty. Meanwhile, the United Nations summit commenced in earnest. Leaders from over 200 nations convened, their attention fixed on the podium as the President of the United States delivered his address. Unbeknownst to them, within the iconic Statue of Liberty, a device lay poised for activation. A mechanism capable of transforming any X-gene bearer present into a mutant. Charles, a new era dawns. Keep watch, Eric declared, ascending the torch. Anna, confined within the device, held the key, while Wolverine and Sabretooth stood by her side. With a nod to Trisk, who also wore an helmet to protect himself from Charles, Eric clasped Anna's hand, intertwining their fates. End of this chapter. Chapter 115. Radiant New York. Professor. Anna's eyes widened with shock as she glanced at Charles, who was bound tightly, rendering him unable to speak. Charles could only emit a muffled sound, his mouth sealed shut. As Eric approached, Anna's horror intensified, and she cried out, No. Stay back. I refuse to. Even if you transform every person on Earth into mutants, I won't yield. I understand your apprehension about your abilities, Eric addressed Anna with a solemn tone. Didn't Charles mention that Alex can formulate potions tailored to optimize your abilities and rectify any shortcomings based on your genetic makeup? Yes, Anna replied hesitantly. Professor Alex did mention it, but you doubted it, Eric interjected with a knowing smile. Living in Alex's estate, you must be familiar with Raven. Anna's expression turned pensive as she contemplated Eric's words. Raven's appearance was beyond my imagination. Her skin is blue, with scales, quite contrary to human aesthetics. Even if she assumes a semblance of normalcy, it's only superficial. Raven's skin isn't real. However, Alex has devised a remedy capable of rectifying genetic anomalies. Raven, once adorned with blue skin, now boasts a complexion of breathtaking beauty. Eric continued his explanation as they walked, stopping beside Anna and gently grasping her wrist, his abilities subtly transferring between them. We were mere youngsters at the time, surrounded by comrades who benefited from Alex's concoctions. Do you recall Hank? Formerly known as the blue-haired beast, he can now shift effortlessly between human form and his previous appearance, all thanks to Alex's potion. As they conversed, the depth of Eric's knowledge and experience became increasingly evident. Trisk, Eric uttered. Trisk slipped on the gloves, swiftly creating a barrier between Wolverine and Sabretooth. Eric slumped to the ground, his strength waning, as he spoke with a hint of exhaustion. After all these years, he can effortlessly mend the flaws in your powers. So, brace yourself for what's to come for mutants. Certainly, Wolverine, known for his beastly nature, wasn't one to easily cooperate. All right, Logan. The ball's in your court now. Will you watch Anna, the one you're fighting to save, perish on stage, or will you join forces with me to spare her life? Eric's lips curled into a sly smile as he posed the question to Logan. Despite Wolverine's typically brash and impulsive demeanor, he knew better than to act recklessly in this moment. After a pregnant pause, Wolverine reluctantly acquiesced. Excellent. The future generations of mutants will remember your sacrifice, Eric affirmed, a grin spreading across his face. The radiation machine, now redesigned by Eric, boasted a larger interior space, capable of accommodating 4 or 5 individuals standing upright. Trisk maneuvered Wolverine and Sabretooth next to Anna. With Anna's hands pressed against their heads, she began absorbing their powers. Trisk, you may proceed, Eric instructed, his eyes fixed on the mutant. Trisk decisively activated the machine, and suddenly a cascade of silver-white brilliance cascaded towards the United Nations summit like a celestial curtain, expanding exponentially with each passing moment until it seemed poised to envelop the entirety of New York City. Look, Charles. The dawn of the mutant era is upon us, Eric exclaimed with fervor as he removed the gag from Charles's mouth, needing him to witness the unfolding events. It's time for the world to embrace its evolution. Eric, cease this madness. You'll bring ruin upon New York. Charles pleaded urgently, his voice strained. After destruction comes rebirth, Eric retorted adamantly, his resolve unshaken. Oh my stars! What in heaven's name is that? Gasped onlookers at the UN summit as they beheld the ethereal silver-white spectacle, their astonishment palpable. Is this some grand fireworks display to commemorate the summit's commencement? Speculated one attendee, bewildered by the unprecedented sight. As Eric's plan unfolded unchecked, its success seemed inevitable this time. Eric's scheme is nearing fruition, remarked Alex softly, his gaze fixed on the radiant display in the heavens. Wait, why don't I recall planning such a celebration? Questioned the President of the United States, seizing those nearby for answers. Mr. President, we're at a loss, replied his bewildered companion, equally perplexed by the spectacle unfolding above. When had they ever organized such a grand fireworks spectacle? Yet, one glance was enough to discern that this luminous phenomenon was no ordinary fireworks show. As the luminous curtains traversed the UN summit grounds and surged towards New York City, they imbued many heads of state and accompanying dignitaries with newfound vigor. The X gene within them stirred, awakened by the catalytic influence of the radiant curtain, granting them extraordinary abilities. But for others, whose exposure to the light was less direct, the awakening of their X gene was incomplete, leaving them with only a fraction of the power bestowed upon their peers. As the ambitions of these newly empowered individuals swelled, chaos engulfed the streets of New York City, heralding the dawn of a new era fraught with uncertainty and upheaval. End of chapter. Chapter 116. The Changes. Behold, Charles, my triumph is complete. Every X-gene carrier in New York will awaken as mutants, Eric declared with a victorious flourish, unleashing both the X-Men and his cohorts. With his mission accomplished, Eric saw no reason to heed Charles's opposition any longer. The shackles of restraint could be cast aside. Freedom was theirs once more. No, Eric. You've wrought havoc upon New York. Charles's voice rang out, heavy with sorrow and dismay. He surveyed the chaotic aftermath. Countless individuals wielding newfound powers without restraint, terrorizing the ordinary populace. Opportunists seized the chance to carve out their own dominions, plunging the world into further disarray. New powers clashed with the old, heralding a grim epoch of violence and suffering. As the machinery fell silent, sweat beading on Anna's brow, even Logan and Sabretooth appeared drained, their forms now worn by exhaustion. Approaching them, Eric gently lifted Sabretooth before turning to Logan, extending a hand in solidarity. You will be revered as heroes among mutants. Your valor will be etched in history, he intoned solemnly, acknowledging their sacrifices amidst this tumultuous upheaval. Logan hesitated, casting a wary glance at Eric before clasping his hand, torn between resentment and gratitude for the role Eric played in shaping him into a mutant icon. My apologies, Eric's voice softened as he turned to Anna, noting the traces of fatigue etched into her youthful features. With a tender gesture, Eric released Anna from her restraints and extended his hand to her. Yet Anna recoiled in fear, her trust shattered by the horrors she had undergone. Eric's expression darkened, withdrawing his hand with a heavy sigh. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the shadows, a vial clutched in his hand. I'm sorry for startling you, Anna. I didn't mean to arrive late, Alex approached Anna, his voice tinged with remorse as he offered the potion. Tears filled Anna's eyes as she sought solace in Alex's embrace, her sobs reverberating through the tense atmosphere. I wanted to surprise you, but I never anticipated this outcome, Alex confessed, pressing the vial into Anna's trembling hand. This is surprise enough, Anna managed a tearful smile. Drink it. It'll help you control your abilities and interact with others, Alex encouraged gently. But Anna shook her head resolutely, discarding the potion. I can touch you, she declared, her joy palpable. For Anna, the gesture meant more than any potion. It was enough for her. After all, 15 was the age of budding affection. Alex, unaffected by time due to the super soldier serum and mutant genes, retained his youthful allure, his charisma drawing admirers like moths to a flame. Alex, it worked. I've done it, Eric exclaimed, gripping Alex's shoulder with excitement. Yes, but it's unleashing chaos upon New York, Alex replied solemnly, his tone heavy with significance. Some individuals who hadn't fully activated their X gene experienced a surge of stimulation, leading to complete mutations, transforming them into beings akin to electric men, watermen, and even sandmen. It all adds up. The whirring of helicopter propellers interrupted their conversation, signaling the discovery of the source, the Statue of Liberty. These people weren't fools. Looks like trouble's headed your way. I'll leave now, Alex remarked, observing the approaching helicopter and shimmering lights. Without hesitation, he scooped up Anna and teleported away from the Statue of Liberty. This wasn't his mess to clean up. Even Anna was an unwitting victim in all of this. As Eric's radiation enveloped New York, the city braced for the ensuing chaos. Awakened individuals with a myriad of abilities emerged, some choosing the path of righteousness, while others succumbed to the allure of superability crimes. Good-hearted souls took it upon themselves to maintain justice, becoming street heroes fighting against the tide of crime. Meanwhile, opportunistic careerists seized control of the underground, giving rise to even greater evil. With New York descending into chaos at an alarming rate, the future seemed bleak. Explosions, crimes, and wanted supercriminals plagued the city, while underground gangs ran rampant. Yet, no matter how embroiled Alex became in the turmoil, anyone foolish enough to threaten his home would be swiftly dealt with. End of chapter. Chapter 117. I'm back. As Eric's radiation flooded the streets of New York, a wave of awakening swept through the city, gifting ordinary individuals with extraordinary powers. Among them, some embraced their newfound abilities for noble causes, while others succumbed to darker inclinations. In the aftermath, a deafening explosion rocked a bank, its walls crumbling under the brute force of a muscular figure. With muscles akin to granite, he tore through barriers as though they were made of mere tofu. "Where's the money?" growled the imposing figure, his canine-like features twisted into a menacing snarl. He loomed over terrified bank staff, demanding access to the vault. "Why yes, it's over there," stammered the trembling bank director, his voice barely audible over the chaos. Ignoring the director, the muscular intruder hurled him aside and proceeded to wreak havoc on the bank's machinery. With a brutal ferocity, he stormed into the vault, leaving cowering civilians in his wake. As he stuffed his bag with cash, the onlookers trembled, knowing they were no match for his colossal strength. In the face of such power, resistance was futile, and the once ordinary citizens could only watch helplessly as their sanctuary was plundered. Rushing to the scene upon receiving the alarm, the police swiftly parked their cruiser at the bank's entrance. Gripping their firearms tightly, several officers aimed at the man sporting a peculiar stone helmet atop his head. Tension hung thick in the air, nerves taut like violin strings. "This isn't the first time. Seems like we've got all sorts these days," muttered one officer, his voice a blend of resignation and frustration. "Criminals or supposed street saviors, it's all becoming a blur," another chimed in, a hint of weariness in his tone. It felt like a clash of titans, a battle beyond their jurisdiction, leaving them with no role but spectators. He'd been reprimanded for this stance countless times before. And now, it appeared they were dealing with yet another mutant, and a formidable one at that. "Stand back," bellowed the muscular figure, his gesture sending the police cruiser careening away, narrowly avoided by the scrambling officers. The vehicle somersaulted several times before erupting into flames, leaving the surrounding officers to gulp nervously. Was this behemoth even within their realm of control? The muscular man let out a boisterous laugh as he sauntered past the blockade, clutching his bag of ill-gotten gains. The officers exchanged uncertain glances, none daring to pursue. "Should we open fire, sir?" One officer ventured cautiously. "Are you out of your mind? Do you want to get yourself killed?" The police chief's words laced with frustration and anger. "Stop!" A silhouette descended from the sky, delivering a forceful kick to the back of the burly man. The impact sent him crashing to the ground, his grip on the money bag loosening, causing a flurry of USD bills to scatter like confetti. "You are so dead, bitch," he roared, lunging at Carol with clenched fists. "Humph! This isn't where you belong. Your place is behind bars," Carol retorted, meeting the man's fist with her own in a clash of titanic strength. Their disproportionate blows collided, yet it was Carol who emerged victorious, her petite frame concealing formidable power. After a brief but intense skirmish, Carol swiftly overpowered the muscular man, confirming his identity before escorting him into a specialized vehicle designed to neutralize mutant abilities and send them to SHIELD's high-security facility for superpowered criminals. Meanwhile, within Alex's manor, the television blared with news of the day's events in New York City. Today's seen a surge in criminal activity across the city, all linked to individuals who gained super abilities following last night's mysterious silver-white light phenomenon. While some New Yorkers have embraced their newfound powers for good, others have turned to villainy, wreaking havoc on our streets. However, amidst the chaos, numerous street-level heroes have risen to confront these superpowered threats and ensure justice prevails. Stay tuned as we hear from eyewitnesses. Alex chuckled wryly, shaking his head at the unfolding events. Seems like our kind are cropping up left and right, but most seem to have a penchant for trouble. Feels like Eric's got his hands full with this mess. End of chapter. Chapter 118. A country. Teacher, so, this situation in New York is caused by Eric. Should we help solve it? Gene frowned as he listened to the news. Alex shook his head and replied, seriously, what's our role in this? It's only when things hit the fan that we realize why there's a divide between good and bad, just like with mutants. Eric plays the tough guy, Charles plays the peacemaker. Eric's mutant brotherhood causes trouble, while Charles's X-Men try to bridge the gap between mutants and humans. But let's be real, it's all nonsense. A wolf raised among dogs might act friendly, but deep down, it's still a wolf. Humans naturally fear what's different, Alex explained, his tone tinged with disdain. But, teacher, wolves can be cute. They're not always scary, Anya interjected, raising her hand. Alex couldn't help but smirk. Your ability to connect with animals is like something out of a fairy tale. But trust me, it's not easy to see the ferocity in them. Exactly. The people from Russia domesticate wolves into huskies. They're not afraid of wolves at all. Your analogy doesn't quite fit. Kitty chimed in. Alex's expression darkened. I was just making a point with that analogy. No need to dissect it like that. Oops. Sorry. Teacher. We were just adding to the discussion, Kitty apologized sheepishly, nudging Anya. Anna giggled, finding the banter amusing. It felt like being part of a family. But, teacher, if Charles and Magneto's ideas aren't right, are you going to solve this problem? Anna inquired. Neither Kitty nor Anya has been persecuted by humans. It can be said they're still innocent, joyful, she continued. But Anna is different. Not only because her abilities hurt her classmates, but also because they hurt mutants like Iceman Bobby and Kurt, Anna explained. Finally, her abilities harmed an ordinary guy. She couldn't forget the fear and disgust in people's eyes. As for Eric kidnapping her and using her to bring New York into the radiation of the machine, the ones responsible for this situation weren't met with much hatred. It's actually very simple, Alex interjected. Just build a country for mutants. A place that's solely ours. The reason big countries wield power and status is their nuclear arsenal. But we mutants are nuclear weapons ourselves, especially me, with my control over atomic troubles. I'm a human-shaped nuclear bomb. Wherever we go, nuclear fusion and fission follow. We could plant a few mushrooms on various borders. If I ask nicely, the heads of these countries would invite me over like grandparents. The listeners chuckled at Alex's jest. It's not just me, Jean, Charles, and Eric. They are equivalent to nuclear bombs in terms of deterrence. Do you know about the apocalypse catastrophe from over a decade ago? Alex recounted, delving into the past. 10 years ago, back when we were just little tykes, we couldn't even tie our shoes properly. Come on, spill the beans, teacher. Kitty nudged Alex's arm, her voice barely a whisper. More than a decade back, there was this catastrophic class mutant called Apocalypse. He wiped out millions in Cairo alone, turning them into nothing but sand. And get this, he even conjured up a pyramid that's still standing tall in Cairo. Plus, it triggered a global nuclear scare, with countries launching nukes into space simultaneously. All of it orchestrated by Apocalypse through poor old Charles here, Alex revealed, dropping the bombshell. Wow! I never figured Charles for pulling off something like that. Kitty exclaimed, wide-eyed. But, do you know why Apocalypse had his sights set on Charles? Alex teased, a hint of mystery in his tone. Why? Tell us, tell us. The girl's curiosity was piqued, eager for more. Because Apocalypse wanted to harness Charles's power to enslave the whole darn planet, Alex disclosed. And then what? What happened in the end? Anya pressed for answers. Well, let's just say I sent Apocalypse packing with a snap of my fingers, turning him into a heap of sand. Alex boasted. Come on, Teach. You're not fooling anyone with that tall tale. Anya chuckled. Yeah, how could you possibly take down someone as powerful as Apocalypse? Kitty chimed in skeptically, waving her hand dismissively. Alex's expression darkened. These kids just couldn't wrap their heads around the truth. Did they really think he was making this stuff up? End of this chapter. Chapter 119. Armor Design. After laying low in Alex's manor for a few days, Tony was finally apprehended by Howard, wrapping up the share transfer agreement in the process. In essence, Tony now held the reins of Stark Industries. As a notorious playboy, stepping into such a role must have him feeling like he's drowning in luxury, a trait he undoubtedly inherited from Howard. After all, in the pages of monthly Playboy magazines, there's a curated selection of beauties for men of Tony's ilk to peruse. And these magazines spare no expense, showcasing only the most exquisite women. After all, no wealthy individual wants anything less than the finest. Last night, Tony splurged a considerable sum to outshine his competitors and win the affections of the top girl for a night, all in the pursuit of pleasure. Tony parted with a hefty sum, close to $30 million. In this day and age, that's an astronomical amount, enough to sustain a lavish lifestyle for decades. But for Tony, it's merely a drop in the ocean. After bidding farewell to the girl, Tony dressed himself and stood atop the penthouse, surveying the scene below. Police cars blared their sirens in every direction. What the hell are those police cars doing? It's been all night. Are they really this inefficient? Tony shook his head, holding a glass of red wine, feeling a bit helpless as he watched the police cars scurrying about. Yesterday, I was just drinking and chatting with the girl. Even from up here on the top floor, I saw that silver light curtain blanketing New York. But Tony couldn't care less. Is it because of what happened last night? Tony pondered, stroking his chin, though it didn't seem to bother him much. Huh? What's this? Tony noticed a dark shadow beneath the floor and hurried towards his own level. There was a sudden crash as the glass in front of Tony shattered, and a strong gust of wind sent him flying. Whoa, what in the world is this? Some kind of special delivery? Tony exclaimed, covered in glass shards, staring at the strange man with bat wings before him in bewilderment. You're Tony Stark, the bat-winged man stated coldly, eyeing Tony intently. Yeah, that's me, Tony replied, dusting himself off as he got up from the ground. Though he appeared composed on the outside, inside he was a bundle of nerves, discreetly reaching for his phone, which was buzzing with missed calls from Alex, its ringer silenced. Tina, do you know him? The man with bat wings asked, fixing Tony with a penetrating gaze. Nina? Who's that? Tony Stark looked perplexed. Did he know her? With his history, he'd been with too many women to keep track. Who the heck was this Tina person anyway? There was no way he could remember the name of every woman he'd been with. Haha, looks like you've forgotten. I'm Nina's ex-fiancée. She left me hanging, but I don't hold it against her. Back then, I didn't have the power to seek revenge like I do now. And guess what? You're on my hit list. The mutant with bat wings snarled, his expression grim as he lunged toward Tony, ready to strike. Tony was caught off guard for a moment. Dealing with this guy was the last thing he wanted. And to think, he even gave money to these gals. Who knew there'd be such a mess? As the winged mutant closed in, Tony swiftly dodged, rolling away like a lazy donkey. He grabbed his phone, still on the line, and shouted, "Hey! Anyone out there? Help! No one can save you now, unless you can sprout wings and fly." The mutant taunted, baring his teeth as he advanced on Tony, the chase resembling a game of cat and mouse. Oh really? Alex calmly extended his hand, conjuring a portal that whisked him halfway across New York City. In seconds, he stood atop the Stark Industrial Building, eyeing the mutant below. With a flick of his wrist, the mutant disintegrated into yellow sand and vanished into thin air. You're lucky I showed up when I did. You were about to be fucked up, Tony remarked, catching his breath as he looked at Alex. Ah, tangled up in a woman's drama again, aren't you? Some things never change, Alex said with a hint of frustration. Well, how was I supposed to know things would go south? I just wanted to help. I'm innocent here, Tony protested, wearing his most innocent expression. Listen, New York City's a mess now, with superpowered criminals running rampant and gangs lurking in the shadows. You better watch your back, Alex cautioned. Don't worry, I've got it covered, bro, Tony nodded, already mentally sketching out plans for his next exoskeleton armor upgrade. Inspiration struck him like lightning. Tony's intellect worked overtime. In no time, intricate mech designs danced in his mind, ready to be brought to life. End of this chapter. Chapter 120. Warning and the Sentinel. Hey, I just rolled out of bed and realized I haven't had breakfast yet. Mind if I crash your morning routine? Tony grinned as he sidled up to Alex. Absolutely. Breakfast it is. Alex ushered Tony into the manor. Sure, he's got a chef who can whip up some dishes, but it never quite hits the mark. So Alex takes matters into his own hands. It has a nice fragrance, Anna remarked as she poured herself a glass. On the dining table the food were laid out, and Katie and Anna eagerly dug in. Take your time, girls. There's plenty more, Raven smiled warmly at Katie and Anna, chewing leisurely unlike the two eager eaters. "Good morning, Uncle Tony," Anya greeted Tony cheerfully. Having met Tony numerous times, she felt comfortable around him. "Anya, you're such a sweetheart. Here's your allowance for today," Tony said, playfully pinching Anya's cheek as he handed her $500. For a middle schooler like Anya, $500 was a substantial sum. "Thank you, Uncle Tony." Anya beamed, already planning how to spend her newfound wealth on toys. "Don't worry, everyone gets a share," Tony chuckled, handing Kadiana a crisp bill as well. "Don't spoil them too much," Alex shot Tony a glance, though he made no move to retract the money. It wasn't about lacking the funds. Rather, Alex aimed to instill good financial habits and discourage a sense of entitlement. What's the harm? This is the age for spending. Dolls, cosmetics, perfume, fashionable clothes, Tony shrugged, unfazed by Alex's disapproval. "Hey, hurry up and finish your food. You talk a mile a minute even with your mouth full," Alex teased, rolling his eyes. Who in the world splurges on cosmetics and perfume at 15 anyway? And as for clothes, there's already a mountain of them in the closet. What more could they possibly need with $500? After scarfing down their meal, the trio stuffed the cash into their pockets, gave Alex a quick wave, and dashed out the door. "Watch yourselves, and don't be late," Alex called after them, but whether they heard him amidst their haste was anyone's guess. "Oh, by the way, bro, what was up last night? Feels like the whole city went bonkers overnight," Tony inquired, flashing a grin once the kids were out of earshot. "Eric triggered all the X genes in mutants last night. Loads of folks have gained mutant powers, some got busted, others are laying low. Like that winged nut job you just dealt with. Long story short, being the heir to Stark Industries puts a target on your back. You better watch yourself. Either hire some mutants with decent powers as bodyguards or stick close to me. Most folks around here won't dare to touch you," Alex explained casually. Alex didn't delve into why troublemakers weren't swarming around Tony, and Tony was shrewd enough not to ask. He knew Alex had everything under control. "Absolutely. And if I catch you sneaking out to play with those models and endanger your life, you know what will happen, right?" Alex warned. "Me? Never. Wouldn't dream of it," Tony replied with mock innocence. At SHIELD headquarters. Lately, it seems like there's an uptick in criminals, and now even gangs are cropping up left and right. HIELD's special prisons are practically bursting at the seams, Nick Fury remarked, massaging his temples as he reviewed the information in his hands. Despite his rapport with Captain Marvel, who had voluntarily arrived in New York City to take down these supercriminals, they were all mutants and required containment in specialized facilities. Regular prisons just couldn't hold them. Nick admitted he'd be in a real bind if it weren't for Charles's mutant school aiding in apprehensions and rehabilitation efforts. These crooks we're dealing with aren't the hardcore killers, thankfully. The real murderers are already behind bars in SHIELD's prison, waiting for their time, Nick explained. Perhaps you could consult with the old hands over at SHIELD before reaching out to other superhero outfits. Maybe a brainstorming session is in order, Phil Coulson suggested. Yeah, it might be worth a shot. If it's just Charles, Ms. Marvel, and maybe even Magneto lending a hand, it could ease the load and keep things from spiraling out of control, Nick mused, his mind already considering the benefits of establishing stronger ties with superhero organizations. It seemed like the best bet for effectively tackling the surge in supercriminals. Phil Coulson perused the information before remarking. So, Howard's adopted son, Alex, is also a mutant. He and Magneto were once imprisoned together in a Nazi concentration camp, forming a strong bond. They were classmates with Charles, and they got along well. On hearing this, Nick started to recall how he once considered calling Alex when Eric kidnapped Senator Kelly. However, judging by Alex's disinterest, it seemed he wasn't keen on getting involved. But now, with all of New York in chaos, courtesy of Magneto, Alex's close ties with him might warrant his involvement, Phil observed. Agreed. Let's reach out to Carol and head to Charles first, suggested Nick. With his influence, we might have a shot at assembling a superhero team under S.H.I.E.L.D. Otherwise, we'll keep playing catch-up. The divide between humans and mutants is just too vast. He shook his head with a sigh. Even though humans possess guns and cannons, they're hesitant to use them in downtown areas. If innocent people get hurt, the backlash from the public will definitely bring them down. Moreover, numerous encounters with mutants have proven that conventional human weapons struggle to be effective against them. Take Magneto, for instance. Unless specialized weapons are employed, dealing with mutants is nearly impossible. Coulson, how's the progress with the research team? How long until we can neutralize these mutant abilities? Nick Fury inquired as he strolled, his thoughts focused on Phil Coulson by his side. It'll take at least a week. The genetic sequence of the X gene in their bodies varies, resulting in diverse abilities. Crafting weapons to counter these abilities takes time. However, they mentioned Colonel Stryker proposed the Sentinel plan previously, but it wasn't taken seriously, Coulson explained. The Sentinel project? Any intel on it? Fury questioned. Got it. Phil Coulson swiftly retrieved information on the Sentinel project. After reviewing it, Fury remarked casually, "Let's revive the Sentinel project, and I want all the details on Weapon X from back then." "Should we head to Alex's manor now?" Coulson inquired. "Absolutely." Fury's single-eyed gaze gleamed with determination as he replied firmly. Chapter 121. The Man in Charge. A steely glint flickered in Nick Fury's eyes as the Sentinel plan resurfaced, a grim reminder of the dark intentions to eradicate mutants. Though the reasons for Trask abandoning the plan ravened a mystery, Stryker persisted in its pursuit. Behind closed doors, under Trisk's covert guidance, Sentinels continued to be developed, albeit without Raven's genetic blueprint, rendering them imperfect. Yet, even without Raven's genes, these Sentinels possessed enough firepower to combat mutants, drawing from the genetic data stored within the machines. Would restarting the Sentinel project stoke Charles's ire? Phil Coulson furrowed his brow, his grip tightening on the Sentinel project dossier. The very thought of the experiments conducted on mutants for this endeavor churned his stomach. Are we to sit idly by and wait for these mutants to lay waste to New York? Nick Fury's retort dripped with disdain. But I've heard reports that many heads of state were transformed into mutants that night, Phil Coulson murmured, unable to shake the horror of such revelations. Agent Phil Coulson, remember your allegiance lies with the United States. The affairs of other nations are not our concern. Nick Fury's tone was cold and uncompromising. Understood, Phil Coulson acquiesced, his resolve firming. Let's pay Charles a visit first, then Stryker. I want to see if his Sentinels are truly worthy of consideration before we entertain the notion of restarting the Sentinel plan, Nick Fury declared as they made their way to the underground garage. Phil Coulson slid into the driver's seat while Nick Fury settled into the passenger side. The car eased out of SHIELD headquarters, navigating through the bustling streets of New York toward Xavier Manor on the city's outskirts. Director Nick, let's not forget, Alex is Howard's adopted son and the mastermind behind Stark Industries' rise to become the leading industry in the United States. Phil Coulson voiced his concerns as he navigated the car. Stark Industries accounts for at least 50% of domestic employment, and any interference with Alex could seriously disrupt its operations. Plus, Stark Industries has stakes in numerous African countries, especially in diamond deposits and oil resources. It's safe to say they're wealthier than our adversaries, he added with a furrowed brow. We're not that naive. We don't need to make a direct move on him. A mere hair, some dandruff, or even a drop of blood would be sufficient for our research purposes. Nick Fury replied with a hint of amusement. Nick had a solid grasp of Stark Industries' history. It wasn't just a single industry. Its influence extended into multiple sectors, dominating many of them. From mobile phones to electronics, medical care to shopping malls, Microsoft to gaming, film and television to heavy and light industries, Stark had its fingers in every pie. Under Alex's leadership over the past decade, Stark had acquired countless companies, expanding its reach even further. The economic crisis had seen many companies go bankrupt, only to be absorbed by Stark Industries, thanks to its advanced technology and forward-thinking strategies. The impact of their innovations had reshaped entire industries, rendering countless competitors obsolete in the face of their superior technology and efficiency. Nearly single-handedly, one individual dismantles a sprawling business empire spanning across industries. Only the most adept asset predators can navigate this financial chaos. Just as these predators were gearing up for a final, desperate stand, Alex, perhaps sensing the inevitable, pulls back once more, causing the already fragile alliance to crumble in an instant. Yet, these scattered predators find themselves powerless to reclaim their seized resources. They're left to cling to whatever assets they still possess in a bid for survival. Even in establishments like dance halls and bars, the reach of Stark Industries is palpable, with every bottle labeled as Stark's own. Then, the man who once commanded the business empire vanishes into thin air. Later he relinquishes control of the empire, opting instead for a life of leisure, spent fishing and basking in the sun at his manor on the outskirts of New York. Furthermore, Nick Fury is aware that Alex is also a mutant, though the extent of his powers remains a mystery. No one knows the full breadth of Alex's abilities. The data alone lists a myriad of possibilities: control over magnetism, psychic powers, teleportation, and more. But one thing is certain. He is undeniably formidable, a mutant of immense strength. Director Nick, we've arrived. Phil Coulson's voice snaps Fury back to the present from his reverie in the data. Let's go see Charles, Fury decides, opening the car door and stepping out. End of this chapter. Chapter 122. Trust. Carol been informed? Nick Fury straightened his bow tie, casting a glance at Phil Coulson as he inquired. She's been notified, and she'll be here soon, Phil Coulson confirmed. All right, let's head in, Nick Fury nodded, leading the way into Charles's school. Charles appeared somewhat fatigued, having spent the day utilizing the brainwave magnifier to track down mutants engaging in nefarious activities, leaving him drained. As Nick Fury strode onto the campus Charles had established, a hint of skepticism flickered in Charles's mind. Why had Nick Fury come here? Despite his puzzlement, Charles emerged to greet Nick Fury, his expression curious. What brings director Nick Fury to my doorstep once more? He inquired. What, doesn't the director of SHIELD ever take a break? Nick Fury quipped, though his tone was light. Just kidding. Shall we move to my office, Director Fury? We can discuss your intentions there, Charles suggested with a slight smile. Haha, indeed. Charles' office. I've come to discuss the mutant mayhem unfolding in New York City, Nick Fury replied, his smile echoing Charles's. The mutant mayhem? Hasn't that already been addressed? We X-Men are more than capable of aiding you in quelling these newly emerged mutants. Charles furrowed his brow, sensing a shift in Nick's motives. Exactly. Our SHIELD special prison is nearing capacity with these criminals. I'm hoping you can share the load. After all, as mutants yourselves, you're more than capable of keeping these mutants in check, Nick Fury explained, a chuckle punctuating his words. I can't allow these bullies into my school. It sets a bad example for all my students, Charles expressed with a frown. Same goes for Logan, Nick Fury chuckled casually. Logan is an exception, Charles retorted firmly. Who cares if he's an exception? We can't afford to let these mutants loose or wreak havoc. Do you want casualties? Nick Fury pondered, stroking his chin. Kill them? That's a dangerously drastic measure. Let me think. Alex should be able to handle these guys, Charles mused, considering Alex's formidable strength as the solution to the mutant problem. As for Magneto? That would only escalate the chaos. That sounds like a plan, Nick Fury agreed with a grin. Charles shook his head, knowing full well what Nick Fury was implying. Yet, he couldn't deny that the mutants posed a threat, and Alex had the power to subdue them. The question remained. How? Chief, why wait? Let's go, Charles urged Nick Fury. Nick Fury smiled lightly. Sorry, I'm waiting for someone. All right, Charles sighed, not privy to Nick Fury's waiting game. Before long, a figure descended from the sky, landing on Charles's campus. Carol? Charles's expression soured slightly, a hint of surprise flickering in his eyes. Did Nick Fury's use of the term suggest he still harbored doubts about their mutant status? Was there still a need to seek assistance elsewhere? Hello, Charles, Carol greeted warmly, extending her hand for a shake. Hello, Carol, Charles replied with a nod. We can proceed now, Nick Fury announced, a sudden smile crossing his face. Is this about addressing the issue with these mutant criminals? Carol inquired. Indeed. The special prison facility of SHIELD can no longer contain them, and only those with lesser offenses can be managed by Charles's associates. So we need to seek help from Alex, Fury explained. Nick, are you sure about this Alex guy? Carol remarked skeptically, though Fury seemed confident. Let's visit him first. He's much stronger than Charles, Fury suggested softly. Accompanied by Charles, Carol, and Nick Fury arrived at Alex's manor. Alex was leisurely tending to his flowers when he noticed the car parked outside. With a mere flick of his psychic power, he discerned the visitors' identities. The bringer bad news has arrived, Alex remarked, casting aside the watering can with a hint of irritation in his gaze as he faced Charles. Not at all. This time, I bring good news, Charles quickly interjected, steering the conversation in a different direction. End of this chapter. Chapter 123. Apology. Alex tossed the kettle aside, fixing a glare on Charles. Figured you weren't here with good news. Charles coughed, attempting to defend himself. Actually, I do have good news. Good news? Your visits usually spell trouble, Alex muttered. Charles pressed on. I'd like you to consider taking in a few mutants this time, Alex. Mutants? I'm not running an orphanage, Alex stated firmly. Seeing Charles's serious expression, Alex realized his friend was earnest about the mutants. Come on, Alex, Charles persisted. Fine, Alex snapped. Hey, Alex, can you not be so dismissive? Charles chided. Dismissive? After everything? Alex shot back. Surprised, Charles apologized. Sorry, Alex, I overstepped. All right, let's move past it, Alex shook his head. Nick Fury joined the conversation. Nice to meet you, Mr. Alex. Pleasure to finally meet you. You're Nick Fury? Well, you've made a decent first impression. We can chat more when I've got the time, Alex replied with a smile. Delighted, Nick Fury nodded. Alex had thought that Fury was a tough nut to crack, but he seemed pretty chill now, like any other guy. And what might your name be, beautiful? Alex tipped his straw hat and offered a gentlemanly nod to Carol. Carol Danvers, but you can call me Carol, or Ms. Marvel, she replied with a smile. Nice name. How about grabbing dinner together sometime? Alex asked. Sure thing, Alex. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. We're here on serious business this time, Charles said, his smile fading. All right, no more jokes. Let's head in, Alex said, putting an end to the banter and leading the way inside with Charles. Alex used my psychokinesis to pour tea for everyone, then turned to Charles and asked, So, what's the deal? Why are you here? Just like I said before, we need you to take in a few mutants, Charles explained. But this is my family's estate, and it's mostly women here. Bringing in these troublemakers might not be the best idea, Alex objected. Their crimes are minor, and they're seeking redemption. Besides, since you've got mostly women here, why not hire them as bodyguards? Charles suggested. Do you even know what they can do? With their abilities, they don't need bodyguards. If we're talking about protection, I know just the guy. Tony, get down here. Alex called out to his friend upstairs. What's up? Tony hurried downstairs. He'd been crashing here for a few days, finding it peaceful and tidy. No one bothered him, which was just how he liked it. He's even contemplating whether to buy the manor next to Alex and live nearby. Despite the allure of the big city, the air pollution and noise levels are just too much. In the suburbs, however, there's no inconvenience to worry about. With Charles' school nearby, there are plenty of shops in the vicinity. I have a few new bodyguards assigned for you, Alex mentioned casually. Bodyguard? But I am safe here, Tony replied, puzzled, as he grabbed a bottle of Coca-Cola. Our family business is in your hands now. If you don't return to oversee things, it could lead to some unfortunate consequences, Alex added nonchalantly. Aha, Tony muttered, looking sulky. He knew his father would come to fetch him eventually. Hey, Tony, Nick Fury greeted with a nod. Being one of the founding members of S.H.I.E.L.D., Howard's son was someone he needed to meet. Do we know each other? Tony asked, giving Nick Fury a perplexed look. I knew your father, and I have to say, you're the spitting image of him in every way, Nick Fury remarked with a smile. Whether it was narcissism or just plain genetics, the resemblance between father and son was undeniable. Tony had inherited all of Howard's qualities flawlessly. Alex mused. End of chapter. Chapter 124. Amusing. Well, Tony, would you be open to having mutant bodyguards? Alex inquired with a smirk. Tony rubbed his chin thoughtfully. He'd always harbored a desire for superhuman abilities like Alex's, but Alex was hesitant to grant him any. Who knew what chaos would ensue if Tony gained powers? Would his Iron Man suit still function? The uncertainties weighed heavily on Tony's mind. After a moment's contemplation, he replied, Yes, I lack many things, but money isn't one of them. I can afford them. And it would be a bonus if they are beautiful women. As the primary shareholder of Stark Industries, Tony spoke with confidence. Tony's got a point, Charles, Alex chimed in, amusement evident in his voice. But Tony, aiming for beauty might be a tad excessive. Will there be any left for others? Alex teased Tony. Tony shrugged, feeling slightly attacked. I'm just being realistic. Besides, it's not like I'm the only one, he defended himself. True. Tony. At your age, chasing after young women might seem a bit inappropriate, Charles teased, chuckling. Hey, Logan's over 100, and he's still chasing after women, Alex countered, a playful grin on his face. Well, now that the matter's settled, please take your leave, Alex nodded, rising from his seat with a casual air. Despite Charles's presence, these individuals weren't even worthy of stepping foot inside. Nick Fury was momentarily stunned. Shouldn't he be more polite? Just brushing people off like that. Nevertheless, Nick Fury signaled for Carol to join him, just to be safe. To be honest, this is the first time I've seen such a grand estate. Could you give me a tour? Carol asked, her cheeks flushing slightly. Well, this was embarrassing. Carol harbored some resentment towards Nick Fury for putting her in this situation. Alex saw through Carol's request, then smiled and replied, Of course, no problem at all. Thank you. Carol breathed a sigh of relief. It would have been really awkward if Alex had refused. Alex proceeded to give Carol a tour of his castle-like villa. His women were independent and had their own careers. They were not just decorations. Emma was a member of Congress. Jessica coached the national gymnastics team, and Raven spent most of her time pursuing her own interests. Recently, inspired by the US manned rocket launch into space, Raven had decided on a whim to become an astronaut. Marvel was filled with stories of radioactive elements, such as the spider that gave birth to Spider-Man after being infected by radioactive radiation. And then there were the Fantastic Four, transformed by unknown cosmic radiation from beyond the universe. The notion of becoming a superhero simply by coming into contact with radioactive elements is definitely amusing, though it's just a fraction of the Marvel Universe's complexity. And of course, there's no guarantee whether one would emerge as a superhero or a monster. Now, my manor might seem grand, but it's really just a humble abode. Anything else you need, Ms. Carol? Alex inquired with a smile. Absolutely. How about you don't disappoint me for dinner? Carol replied, her own plans in mind as she identified whose room belonged to whom and aimed to gather some cells for Stryker's research. It would be my pleasure, Alex nodded, unfazed by the unknown intentions of his guest. At the dinner table, Alex requested a half-cooked steak and red wine for her. After the meal, she excused herself to Raven's room under the pretense of using the restroom, covertly collecting a few hairs and some dander, which she stowed away in her bag. Observing Carol's actions, Alex stroked his chin, amused by her intentions in collecting Raven's genetic material. The world was about to get interesting, and he could finally stretch his muscles a bit. End of this chapter. Chapter 125, Read. In a remote location in Canada, a base lay dormant, housing more than a dozen dormant robots. Alex's eyes narrowed in cold determination. Sentinels? Stryker hadn't given up, it seemed. And with Ms. Surprise, Nick Fury, and Wolverine's apparent involvement, it was clear whose idea it was. Though this plan had been abandoned previously, and its instigator, Trix, had defected to the mutant camp, Stryker had quietly continued his efforts, manufacturing Sentinels in the 67-0. Now, it appeared the Sentinel project was being revived. While Sentinels were no match for fifth-level mutants, what incensed Alex was the audacity to target him. Sentry plan. Targeting my partner? Alex's eyes flashed with cold anger. Did they think he was ignorant? His telepathic powers allowed him to delve into their minds and uncover their schemes, yet he refrained from doing so, deeming it beneath him. Did they truly believe he required a brainwave amplifier like Charles? Underestimating his strength was their gravest mistake. Jensen's phantom creation abilities were potent, especially for manipulation. Even Charles, a master of soul domination, had fallen victim. If Alex unleashed his powers, the results would be devastating. However, the time wasn't right yet. When the time came, these individuals would witness the true terror of a fifth-level mutant. It's time to sound the alarm for these guys. Otherwise, are mutants just going to be pushed around? Alex thought to himself. Furthermore, Alex wanted to prove that their so-called Sentinels were nothing to be afraid of. But while Sentinels posed no threat to him, they could still be dangerous to mutants below his level, including Charles, Eric, and even his own women. Let's call them back first, Alex decided. The threat of Sentinels to mutants like Charles was too significant to ignore. Alex reached out to Eric, subtly using his psychic powers to communicate without revealing himself. Instead, he manipulated the angel beside Eric. Eric, we're in trouble, the chief angel suddenly spoke. Huh? What's going on? Eric turned to the angel, only to find his eyes completely black, devoid of any white. He immediately understood that the angel had been controlled. Are you Charles? Eric asked, his expression hardening. No, I'm Alex. I need to inform you that the sentry plan has been restarted, the controlled angel relayed. What? Eric's expression shifted, realizing the severity of the situation. He, too, was aware of the potential consequences, and he rose from his seat in alarm. These damn humans, we have to stop them, Eric declared, turning to the angel with determination. Just leave this to me. You just need to hide it. Don't interfere, Mr. Angel instructed before reverting to his original state. Angel rubbed his head, wondering what had just transpired. Eric's expression shifted slightly, but he ultimately decided not to intervene. If Alex was confident, then Eric trusted his judgment. With Brotherhood's substantial population, they needed to ensure their own survival. The underground world seemed like a viable option. Angel, gather all the brothers back later, Eric ordered. Why? Won't our recent efforts go to waste? Chief Angel questioned hastily. This is for the safety of our brothers. We can't continue putting them in danger outside. Alex made it clear, Eric explained calmly. Alex. Angel paused, recalling the scene when Smith killed Air Tion. After Alex briefed Eric, he refrained from contacting Charles. Researching Raven's genes would require time, and safety was paramount during this period. Alex feared Eric might take preemptive action, potentially jeopardizing their plans. Instead, he opted to involve S.H.I.E.L.D. to preempt any disruptions. But he still needed to inform his own woman. Sensing Raven's location, Alex teleported near her vicinity. An aerospace base, seemingly constructed by Stark Industries. Director John, there's undoubtedly a genetic code within the cosmic storm. Once decrypted, it'll propel humanity forward, a man in a white coat explained earnestly to a suited man. Mr. Reed, please curb your fantastical notions. How could human genetic code reside in outer space? It's unrealistic. Moreover, I'm not the authority here. You should seek approval from the master of Stark Industries. You're aware of the costs involved in spacecraft, Director John responded, feeling somewhat helpless. End of this chapter. Chapter 126. Susan. Reed. Alex's brows furrowed in surprise at the name. It struck a chord of familiarity within him. As he sifted through his memories, it dawned on him. Reed was indeed Mr. Fantastic of the Fantastic Four. But why was he here? Unaware that Susan Storm wasn't yet Reed's girlfriend, Alex pondered the reason for Reed's presence. Turning to the Tony Stark for assistance. Reed flashed a wry smile. If I could, why would I seek your help? Mr. Reed, allow me to be blunt. We're here to launch satellites and pursue ventures that benefit the company. Your idea seems far-fetched. We lack the understanding of the universe. Investing heavily in such speculative endeavors would be unwise, John interjected, shaking his head. The notion that the secrets of human genes lay within the cosmos seemed absurd to him. Is the human body linked to cosmos? Interesting, Alex mused. Moreover, Stark Industries wasn't lacking in funds. If they were to provide this product for study, wouldn't Susan be his? Trust me, this is the result of years of research. The structure of the human body bears striking similarities to that of the galaxy. Human DNA within a cosmic storm shares remarkable similarities. If one could enter such a storm, unraveling the secrets of human genetic code would be entirely plausible, Reed explained convincingly. Mr. Richards, likening a cosmic storm to human DNA and comparing Sagittarius to a horse. Isn't that a bit far-fetched? The universe is vast, and there are countless phenomena beyond our scientific comprehension, John interjected skeptically. Reed's expression fell. It seemed no one was buying into his ideas. Clap, clap, clap. Suddenly, applause rang out. Reed turned to see a young, handsome man approaching, the source of the applause. Not bad. I like your theory, Alex remarked with a smile as he approached. Boss. John greeted excitedly. Well, allocate the necessary funds. I trust you won't let me down, Richard? Alex smiled, patting Reed on the shoulder. Definitely. I won't disappoint your trust. Reed beamed with happiness. Okay, get to work, Alex said, giving Reed a reassuring smile. Originally intending to find Raven, Alex hadn't expected these unexpected gains. Life is indeed full of surprises. Boss, are you here to inspect the work? John inquired promptly. After years of leading Stark Industries, almost every employee recognized Alex's face. No, I'm here to find Raven. Carry on, Alex replied casually. Understood, boss. John nodded and promptly left, resolved to keep an eye on Reed's research project. As a subordinate, it was essential to understand the boss's intentions, no matter the reason. Heading to the training base, Alex contemplated the cosmic storm that Reed is aiming for. He need to take part in it. The training base segregated men and women's training areas. Entering, Alex observed two individuals working out, their sweat-soaked clothes accentuating their perfect figures. One was familiar to Alex, having touched every inch of her skin, while the other's face exuded a similar familiarity, much like his encounter with Reed earlier. Without a doubt, this was Susan Storm. Alex pondered why Reed and Susan were seeking help from the Stark Industries. Nevertheless, it suited him. End of this chapter. Chapter 127. Surprise. Hey honey, Alex greeted Raven as he approached. Dear. What brings you here? Raven exclaimed in surprise. Just dropping by to see you, Alex replied with a smile. Raven, who's this? Susan inquired, noticing Alex's presence. Oh, this is my husband, Alex. Susan, meet Alex. Raven introduced. Hello, Susan, Alex greeted, extending his hand. After a brief shake, Susan withdrew her hand. I'll leave you two to chat, she said, darting off to continue her exercises. Turning his attention back to Raven, Alex smirked. So, am I in trouble for checking her out? Raven chuckled. Trouble? Only little girls get jealous, she teased, shaking her head. Even as Alex pondered Raven's flirtatious remarks, he remained steadfast. Let's not forget about the Sentinel Project, he reminded her. Sentinel Project? Wasn't that abandoned ages ago? Raven furrowed her brow in confusion. No, Stryker's been quietly working on it, and there's been significant progress. Nick Fury even acquired your genetic sample for study. The real Sentinels may soon become a reality, Alex revealed. Raven's expression turned anxious. Why didn't you stop them, she asked, concern evident in her voice. With Sentinels armed with mutant genes, they'd pose a formidable threat. Mutants wouldn't stand a chance. This Sentinel may pose a significant threat to others, but for me, it's just a minor inconvenience. And I wanted to stretch my muscles a bit, Alex remarked casually. And? Raven inquired, regarding Alex with curiosity. And so, I want you to be cautious and avoid any encounters with the Sentinels, Alex explained. Got it, Raven replied with a smile, giving Alex a quick hug before darting off again. With a small smile, Alex entered his office and instructed the base managers to summon Susan. Miss, someone from higher up wants to see you. It's the head of Stark Industries, John respectfully informed Susan. Me? Why would they want to see me? Susan couldn't help but wonder why she was being summoned. Miss, you'll find out soon enough, John replied, shaking his head without further explanation. Filled with curiosity, Susan followed John to the office door. All right, Miss Susan, let's go in, John gestured, then promptly excused Johnny's, leaving Susan to enter the office alone. Susan entered the room anxiously, finding only the back of the boss's chair visible. Susan Storm, your dream is to become an astronaut, right? Alex inquired softly, glancing at the information in his hand. Susan nodded timidly. Yes, that's correct. Feeling nervous, Susan wondered why someone of such high stature was seeking her out. Was it for her looks? She dismissed the thought immediately. Someone like Alex had likely encountered countless women. Perhaps it was something else entirely. Her mind raced with possibilities, her anxiety akin to an ordinary person suddenly meeting the president. This is a very normal thing, she reassured herself. Well, all the internal and training standards have been met. If there are no issues, you'll definitely be selected for the next manned mission, Alex affirmed, nodding as he reviewed the data. Susan had trained exceptionally well. A flicker of joy crossed Susan's face, but it quickly dissipated as Alex's next words hit her hard. End of this chapter. Chapter 128. Game of Seduction. Well, you've met all the internal and training standards. If everything checks out, you'll definitely be selected for the next manned rocket mission, Alex remarked, reviewing the data. Despite Susan being a woman, her training had been exemplary. A glimmer of joy lit up Susan's face at the promising news. However, her elation was short-lived as Alex's next words plunged her into despair. But a friend of mine mentioned that his nephew has a keen interest in space exploration and would love the opportunity to go. Alex's voice trailed off, a subtle smirk playing at the corner of his lips. With Susan's back turned to him, she couldn't discern his expression. Meanwhile, a pang of coldness pierced Susan's heart as she realized she might lose the opportunity due to nepotism. So, does this mean my qualifications are being overridden? Susan couldn't suppress the bitterness in her voice, feeling disheartened at the thought of her hard work being dismissed. If you truly aspire to be an astronaut, there's another option, Alex remarked, a faint smile gracing his lips. What option? Susan inquired, turning to face him. Be my partner, Alex replied, swiveling his chair around to meet Susan's gaze head-on. Susan's heart skipped a beat as she processed Alex's proposition. She had never considered such a possibility, but the idea intrigued her. With a coy smile, she stepped closer to him, allowing her hand to gently brush against his. Why are you doing this? Susan asked, her voice laced with a hint of playfulness as she leaned in closer to Alex. Alex's smile widened slightly as he leaned back in his chair, seemingly enjoying the power he held over her. Because I am the head of Stark Industries. I hold sway over much of the United States economy, he explained, his tone casual yet smug. Susan clenched her jaw, her frustration boiling over at the blatant display of privilege and entitlement. It's unbelievable. Is money really all it takes to do whatever you want? Susan exclaimed incredulously, her eyes narrowing in determination. Alex chuckled softly, his confidence unwavering as he rested his hands on the table. Sorry, but yes, money can truly make almost anything possible, he replied, a hint of arrogance coloring his words. As Alex reached for the phone on his desk, Susan's mind raced with a plan. She couldn't let him dictate her future any longer. Before Alex could dial the number, Susan leaned forward, her voice dripping with honeyed charm. "Is that so, Alex?" she purred, her gaze locking with his. "But money can't buy everything, can it? There are some things that are far more valuable than all the riches in the world." Alex raised an eyebrow, intrigued by Susan's sudden change in demeanor. "And what might those things be?" he asked, his curiosity piqued. Susan flashed him a seductive smile, her eyes sparkling with mischief. "Passion, for one," she whispered, her voice barely above a whisper. "Adventure. Excitement. And maybe even a little bit of danger." Alex's breath caught in his throat as he realized what Susan was implying. Suddenly, he found himself captivated by her confidence and allure. "Are you suggesting what I think you're suggesting?" he asked, his voice betraying a hint of excitement. Susan leaned in closer, her lips tantalizingly close to his ear. "Only one way to find out," she murmured. Alex grinned, relishing in his own wickedness. "Now that you've made your decision, strip," he said with a wicked smile. If he was going to play the villain, he might as well go all out. Susan's heart pounded in her chest as she realized the opportunity that presented itself. She knew she had to act fast, before Alex's intentions became reality. With a sly smile, Susan began to slowly unbutton her shirt, her movements deliberate and calculated. She watched as Alex's eyes widened in surprise, his smirk faltering for the first time. "Are you really going to do it?" Alex asked, his voice betraying a hint of uncertainty. "I'm taking control," Susan replied, her voice dripping with confidence as she continued to undress. "You think you can manipulate me with your power and money, but you're wrong. I know exactly what I'm doing." As Susan stood before him, clad only in her undergarments, she could see the shock and desire flickering in Alex's eyes. She knew she had him right where she wanted him. "Is this what you want, Alex?" Susan asked, her voice low and seductive as she stepped closer to him, her body inches away from his. "Or are you afraid of a woman who's not afraid to play your game?" For a moment, Alex seemed unsure of how to respond, his usual confidence faltering in the face of Susan's unexpected boldness. But then, a wicked grin spread across his face, and he reached out to pull Susan into his arms. "You have no idea what you're getting yourself into," he whispered, his voice filled with both warning and excitement. "Maybe not," Susan replied, her own grin matching his as she leaned in to kiss him, sealing their pact with a promise of both power and passion. As they embraced, Susan knew that she had won this round. But she also knew that the game was far from over, and she was more than ready to play. End of this chapter. Chapter 129. Conflicting Emotions. Susan lay on the bed in Alex's manor, her body drained of strength, her expression a tangle of emotions. Despite Alex's recent tenderness, she couldn't decipher her feelings toward him. Was it hatred or affection? Did she despise him for his deceptive behavior, or was she drawn to his assertiveness? She grappled with these conflicting emotions, unable to find clarity. Watching Susan's inner turmoil, Alex softened his tone. "You're welcome to stay here from now on. If you still aspire to be an astronaut, I won't stand in your way. I don't see women as mere decorations. Like Emma, who serves in Congress, Jessica, who coaches the national gymnastics team, and Raven, who's charting her own path, I'll support you in your endeavors," he reassured her. Reflecting on his earlier manipulation, Alex acknowledged his cunning, though he also acknowledged her deviousness. "All right, let's cut to the chase. Did you really overwrite my qualifications?" Susan sighed in resignation, her frustration evident. With a mischievous grin, she playfully pinched Alex. Alex winced, marveling at Susan's unyielding spirit. This young lady certainly wasn't one to hold back. "You definitely lied to me. You came here for Raven, and then you saw me and were drawn to me." "That's the truth," Alex admitted frankly. "Well, I must have been unlucky to have met you," Susan replied bitterly, her resentment evident. "All right, don't be angry. I'll make it up to you in the future," Alex coaxed, understanding when to be assertive and when to be conciliatory. "Humph," Susan huffed, turning her head away. "You don't know what you're missing out on, Mississippi." "Let me show you how good I can be," Alex teased, raising his eyebrows playfully before tickling Susan once more. "No more," Susan exclaimed, surrendering quickly. As she caught her breath, Susan found herself gazing at Alex's neck, feeling a strange mix of frustration and warmth towards him. "Was what you said earlier true?" Susan suddenly asked. "What?" Alex was caught off guard, not quite grasping the context. "I mean, about not interfering with our business," Susan clarified. "It's non-negotiable. You're not allowed to be intimate with men other than me." Alex's tone was firm. Susan couldn't help but chuckle as she watched Alex. Maybe he's not so bad after all, she thought. Kind of cute, even. You're so controlling, Susan sighed. Yeah, I'm quite the tyrant, Alex admitted, lifting Susan's chin and planting a kiss on her lips. Susan responded warmly, momentarily forgetting Alex's earlier demands. What good is having a crush? He doesn't even have the guts to go to jail for her. So what's the point? I want to become an astronaut and fly into space. Will you help me? Susan leaned against Alex and asked softly. Definitely, just not right now, Alex replied, thinking of the Fantastic Four plot. Why not? Susan asked, a hint of disappointment in her voice. Because mutants will soon clash with humans. It's safest for you to stay with me. I don't want you to get hurt, Alex explained softly. Well, I trust you, Susan said, feeling a warm sense of contentment and joy in her heart. End of this chapter. Chapter 130. Sentinels. Inside Alex Manor, Johnny roamed around with wide-eyed wonder, his gaze tinged with envy. Sis, when did you land such a wealthy boyfriend? Johnny exclaimed, all evident in his voice. Just yesterday, Susan replied, recalling the night a hint of amusement. If he fancied her, why not simply say so? No need for all the theatrics. Yet, she couldn't deny the thrill of it all. Yesterday? Come on, sis, don't pull my leg, Johnny protested, skepticism written all over his face. Why not? Susan chuckled. If Alex was only after a fling, why go to such lengths? This manor is incredible. Johnny gushed with excitement. It's all right. You're Susan's little brother, right? Alex, clad in casual attire, approached with a warm smile. Yeah, Johnny chimed in, his words smooth as butter. I really like her, Alex chuckled, wrapping his arm around Susan's waist, lifting her chin, and planting a kiss on her lips. Susan's face flushed crimson as she pushed Alex away and hurried into the manor. Now I was truly embarrassed. How could I face my brother after this? Despite her embarrassment, there was a sweet warmth in her heart. Isn't it every woman's desire to find a man who loves her, cares for her, protects her, and makes her feel secure? With Susan dashing away, Alex couldn't help but smile. She was such a cute girl. His gaze then shifted to Johnny, one of the future members of the Fantastic Four. But whether the Fantastic Four would come together was still uncertain. Are you still at work, Johnny? Alex inquired. Yeah, Johnny confirmed with a nod. Where do you work? Alex asked. If Johnny was struggling, Alex didn't mind extending a helping hand. After all, he was his woman's younger brother. I'm a professional racer, and the pay is pretty good. Johnny replied with a grin, scratching his head. Racing? That sounds exciting, Alex chuckled. It definitely is. Feeling the wind rush past, the roar in your ears, it's exhilarating. Johnny exclaimed, his eyes lighting up with enthusiasm as he talked about his passion. That sounds like a great hobby. Is there anything you'd like to improve in racing? Or perhaps start your own racing club? Alex suggested, looking at Johnny. Money was the last thing Alex lacked. A spark of interest flickered in Johnny's eyes. For a racer, what could be more important than customizing his own rides? He was a whiz with machinery, and car modifications were his specialty. Starting his own racing club was every racer's dream. Considering his relationship with Alex, which was mostly based on his sister being Alex's woman, Johnny hesitated before declining. No, I hope you treat my sister better. That's more than enough for me, Alex. Alex was taken aback at first, then his expression softened into a smile. Let me make two things clear. Firstly, your sister will live like a queen. And secondly, do you think I care about money? I may lack some things, but money isn't one of them. Is what you said true, Alex? Johnny asked eagerly. Absolutely. Here's a check for $50 million. With that, you should be able to pull it off, Alex replied casually, jotting down the amount on the check. Absolutely. I can definitely make it happen, Johnny exclaimed, his excitement palpable. Alex handed the check to Johnny and watched as the young man scampered off. Approaching Susan, Alex listened as she expressed concern about Johnny's penchant for dangerous stunts. He's always been a thrill seeker. Let him have his fun. He knows what he's doing, Alex reassured her, his touch lingering a bit longer than necessary. Meanwhile, Stryker surveyed the Sentinel robots before him with a sense of satisfaction. What's the progress on Mystique's genetic research? He inquired. It's nearly complete. Mystique's genes exhibit remarkable adaptability, capable of countering mutant abilities and even surpassing them, his subordinate reported. Excellent. Let's put our findings to the test, Stryker declared with a sinister grin. Mutants? They'd soon be a thing of the past, thanks to the Sentinels. Dragging a Sentinel into the vast and desolate room, a ragged human shuffled in on the opposite side. Though he appeared unremarkable, he was exceedingly dangerous. A mutant and a notorious criminal at that. How much did Nick Fury promise to fund us? Stryker observed the skirmish below, questioning his assistant, the deceased woman at his side. Nick Fury allocated $300 million. He mentioned it's the maximum amount he could mobilize, the deceased woman replied. 300 million? It's a tad underwhelming, but it'll do for now, Stryker frowned, considering that each Sentinel cost only $1 million to produce, allowing for the creation of around 300 Sentinels with that budget. However, these Sentinels still lacked significant strength. It typically took 3 to 5 of them to handle mutants like Charles or Magneto. Although the Sentinels hadn't yet proven their worth, having 300 million at their disposal was a boon. Stryker had constructed over a dozen of them in the past few years alone. One of the 3-story Sentinels below scanned the mutant opposite it, instantly analyzing and simulating the opponent's abilities after integrating Raven's genes. The mutant appeared terrified as a layer of bony armor enveloped his body. Clearly, this was his power, the ability to manipulate his own bones at will. The mutant charged toward the Sentinel, his 5 fingers sprouting pale, glowing claws, evidently aiming to dismantle the Sentinel outright. However, he was overestimating his chances. The Sentinel's eyes gleamed as it exerted the same power to manipulate its own bones. With a mere clench of his hands, Mutant's expression before him contorted in agony, and in the next instant, the mutant's body exploded into fragments, even his bones scattered, morphing indiscriminately in the grip of the Sentinel. Stryker witnessed this brutal scene without a flicker of emotion. Instead, a twisted sense of satisfaction lingered. Mutant's demise was imminent. Is the video recorded? Stryker inquired. It's recorded, the woman confirmed, pushing her glasses up indifferently. Send it to Nick Fury. The Sentinels will commence full production. Mutant's reign ends now, Stryker declared, his eyes gleaming with cold determination. At S.H.I.E.L.D. headquarters, Nick Fury's expression betrayed a hint of satisfaction as he spoke to Phil Coulson, contact Stryker. Have him send all Sentinels so that Congress members witness the results and allocate more funds to him. Understood, Chief, Phil Coulson acknowledged, hastening to relay the message to Stryker. Watching the scene unfold on the screen, Carol couldn't help but question the morality of it all. The Sentinel's ruthlessness left her unsettled. She also pondered whether Stryker and Nick Fury were colluding to confront mutants like Charles and Alex. Despite her favorable impressions of Charles and Alex, she couldn't shake the feeling that Nick Fury was calculating, cunning, and ruthless. Comparatively, Logan, though lacking in manners, was genuine. If he liked you, he liked you. If not, he made no pretense. He was straightforward in his likes and dislikes, cutting off ties with those he disliked without hesitation. Carol shook her head, realizing it was time to distance herself from Nick Fury. Seeing his true colors, she preferred not to be caught in his plans. End of this chapter. Chapter 131. Support. Our research once believed that Neanderthals went extinct while competing with the more evolved Cro-Magnons. But recent studies of our DNA suggest that the two races may have interbred, eventually evolving into modern humans. In other words, they evolved into us, Storm explained with a smile to the group of children dressed in white, pacing back and forth as he elucidated the origins of the ancient peoples and the modern race. Some of the children looked puzzled, unsure if they were regular humans or mutants. Yes, Storm confirmed, acknowledging that mutants were indeed the ancestors of the current mutant population. His gaze swept over the children, focusing momentarily on a little boy who stuck his tongue out mischievously at a girl with a lollipop. With a hands-on-hip stance, Storm called out to the mischievous boy. Audie, not now. Audie promptly withdrew his tongue, scratching his head sheepishly. Observing this, Jean approached the boy, gently resting a hand on his shoulder. Stay focused, Audie, he advised before nudging him back into the attentive crowd gathered around Storm. These little ones seem quite engaged in the lesson, Alex remarked with a chuckle as he glanced at the scene beside him, where Jean sat. Just here for the session. Storm handles the explanations. They have other stops after this, Jean replied with a smile. Ah, I remember Charles mentioning something about Neanderthals and Cro-Magnons back then, Alex reminisced, recalling a conversation from 1962. Hee, I remember Emma soaking all my notes, Charles chimed in from behind, joining the conversation. That's on you for knowing my least favorite thing is essays, Alex shot back. Haha, you hate paperwork? That's not necessarily true. Remember how eloquently you dissected human nature in the beginning, Charles chuckled softly. Is he questioning my expertise? Time to show him what I'm made of, Alex chuckled, then inquired casually, "Got any other plans for me?" "Just come and see these little ones. It'll be worth your time," Charles replied, watching the children with a fond smile. As Storm finished her commentary, the children scattered, Katie leading Anna and Anya off to play. Storm approached Alex, brushing his white hair aside, and addressed Charles, "Professor." "Excellent work," Alex praised. "It's the least I can do," Storm replied, bashful. Suddenly, footsteps echoed, and Emma, sporting glasses, hurried over. "What's going on, Emma?" Alex inquired, noting her serious expression. "We've got a situation." "Take a look at this," Emma said, presenting a video screen to Alex and Charles. The screen displayed footage of sentinels attacking mutants. Charles maintained a cold demeanor, his hands tightly clenched, the whitened knuckles betraying his inner turmoil. Alex shook his head, recognizing the gravity of the situation. "This is a sentinel. Didn't we alter the future? Why has the sentinel reappeared?" Charles inquired with remarkable composure. Stryker hadn't relented. Instead, he clandestinely continued his research on sentinels. Over the years, he had manufactured more than a dozen of them, garnering support from Congress. The impact of Eric's previous actions had been immense. Emma sighed, recalling her involvement in the original debacle. Little did she expect sentinels to resurface. They received support from Congress? Charles couldn't contain his agitation. What did this signify? The war between mutants and humanity had commenced. However, they claimed it was to apprehend mutant criminals, Emma retorted with a sardonic smile, her tone dripping with disdain. $30 billion to apprehend mutant criminals? Ridiculous. Perhaps sentinels are costly, Charles conjectured uncertainly. Costly? Emma scoffed, her smile tinged with mockery. Maybe with limited technology, it's indeed expensive. But $1 million could suffice. $30 billion? That's a plan to exterminate mutants. This situation underscored the dire consequences of Eric's past actions, driving humanity's resolve to eradicate mutants. The radiation that permeated New York served as a catalyst for mutant transformation. But what if it proved lethal? No one could guarantee otherwise. End of this chapter. Chapter 132. The Secret. "Well, we'll address this later," Alex remarked, shaking his head slightly. He gestured around, indicating there were others present besides them. "Seems like we'll have to wrap up the extracurricular activities sooner than planned," Charles sighed, his ideals now under serious scrutiny. Was he really on the right path? "Storm, round up those students," Alex instructed. "Sure thing," Storm nodded, turning to gather the dispersed students. After a short while, Storm managed to round up most of the students, only to realize that 5 were still missing. Bobby, Anna, John, Kitty, and Anya are nowhere to be found. Storm reported, a hint of anxiety in his voice. With the situation becoming increasingly tense, the absence of all 5 students naturally heightened Storm's concern. "How many are missing?" Alex frowned, instantly extending his senses. Addressing Storm, Alex said, "I've located them. They're grabbing a bite in the food court." In the bustling food court, Kitty, Anna, and Anya strolled along, while Bobby and John were momentarily detained by the security, much to their amusement. Bobby, however, harbored a desire to converse more with Anna, who seemed indifferent towards him. This left Bobby feeling rather helpless. He was aware of the rumors circulating about him, especially those spread by Kurt, expressing his intense disdain for Magneto's brotherhood. It almost worked. "Your hair is stunning," Bobby attempted to break the ice as they walked, admiring Anya's emerald green locks, drawing surprised exclamations from his companions. "Thank you for the compliment," Anya said, her smile gentle. The innate bond she shared with nature drew parallels to the fairy druids of mythology. Animals seemed drawn to her presence, regardless of their usual demeanor. What might be a fierce wolf or lion to others, were merely a husky and 2 large cats before Anya. In her wake, even venomous insects would retreat, birds would bring forth fruits to her hands, and flowers would bloom in her presence, defying their usual seasons. In moments of peril, whether bird, insect, or predator, they all seemed compelled to shield Anya from harm, as if she were nature's cherished child. Anya's heart remained as pure as fresh snow, her kindness akin to an untouched canvas. "Hey," a guy interjected, his voice intrusive, addressing them. "Can't you see we're enjoying our time here? Can't you? Get lost, kid," the other 2 joined in, their words laced with disdain. Upon closer scrutiny, these 3 girls were indeed striking. Whether it was Kitty, Anna, or Anya, each exuded a natural charm that effortlessly drew attention. "I wonder if we could all grab a bite together." The 3 young men exchanged glances, expecting Bobby and John to step up as the protectors of the girls. "Surely," These protectors wouldn't stand for any harm coming their way. As for Bobby and John, they were determined to shield the girls from any potential harm. The men were clearly trying to take advantage of the girls, and Bobby and John were not about to let that happen. Absolutely not. Please leave us be. Bobby stood up firmly, his protective instinct kicking in. Who do you think you are? One of the men sneered back. Youngsters can be quick to escalate confrontations when they disagree. However, these girls weren't ones to back down easily. Both Bobby and John had extraordinary abilities. They were mutants who could handle regular confrontations with ease. John flicked on his lighter, tapping into his ability to control flames. He set one of the young men's clothes on fire, watching them panic with a smug smirk. Bobby's expression tensed, and he promptly unleashed a blast of cold air, extinguishing the flames John had ignited. By now, the three young men were terrified, trembling on the ground, staring at Bobby and John in disbelief. Fear was evident on their faces, while onlookers shot them disgusted glances. Mutants, especially after the chaos in New York, didn't have a good reputation. Everything froze as everyone held their breath, a palpable tension filling the air. Alex strolled over with Storm, Charles, Emma, and Jean following behind, their expressions menacing as they fixed their gaze on Bobby and John. What are you doing? Bobby tried to explain, Professor. They were harassing Anya and the others. We were just trying to protect them. I understand, Alex acknowledged with a nod, but these girls are capable of handling themselves. Don't misuse your powers to intimidate others next time. Clear? Bobby nodded earnestly. Yes, I understand. Charles sighed at the unfolding situation, knowing Alex's true nature all too well. Storm stood silently, a storm brewing in her eyes. Emma observed with cold detachment, relishing in the chaos. Jean watched wide-eyed, unsure of what to make of it all. As Alex turned away, he glanced back at Bobby and John. You two, come with me. He marched over to where the three young men were still recovering from their scare, fear now mixed with confusion. Alex's tone turned menacing as he addressed them. You should be ashamed of yourselves, trying to resist my authority. Consider this a warning. Cross me again, and you'll face dire consequences. With that, Alex led Bobby and John away, leaving behind a chilling sense of oppression and a warning of darker times to come. End of this chapter. Chapter 133. Forgotten Strength. Charles looked at Alex's behavior and sighed helplessly. All right, Alex, please don't encourage Bobby in the wrong direction. Alex shrugged, replying casually. I'm just showing him how to handle bullies like this properly. Someone who dares to mess with Anya and the others must have a screw loose, don't you think? If we don't put him in his place, who will? Teaching him badly? Why would you say that? Isn't it typical for boys his age to act impulsively? Besides, someone like that needs to learn a lesson, Alex retorted lightly. Charles smiled wryly. At that moment, a news bulletin interrupted their conversation on TV. After the recent unrest in New York, more and more ordinary people have been injured by mutants. In response, the President and Congress have conducted investigations and discussions, leading to the approval of the Sentinel Plan, aimed at apprehending and preventing mutant-related incidents. Next up, a showdown between the Sentinel and a mutant known as Stir, who has reportedly killed 2 women and possesses the ability to manipulate bone structure. The footage shown by Emma earlier was being broadcast, albeit with the gruesome parts concealed. It was then announced that they were only discussing strategies and not advocating for the harm of mutants. The Sentinel was portrayed as the perfect solution to deal with mutants. Charles's expression darkened upon hearing this news. After a moment of silence, he sighed heavily, saying softly, "Let's go. We need to keep a close eye on this Sentinel, or even take steps to dismantle it." Charles appeared resolute, having glimpsed the future and resolved to prevent further tragedies. It's good that you see it that way. I half expected you to stick to your guns, Alex remarked with a smirk. Persistence is necessary, but these are extraordinary times, Charles replied with a laugh. I'll inform Eric and have him join our discussion, Charles stated after a brief pause. I've already informed him and advised him not to get involved, Alex shook his head. Fair enough. If humans catch wind of this, they'll likely deploy sentinels to encircle Eric. We won't stand idly by. It could escalate into a full-blown war between humans and mutants, Charles remarked, contemplating the potential consequences. Don't you think mutants should show humans a little something? Alex recalled the shock and awe humans experienced when Magneto and Jean displayed their powers in X-Men 3. Humans have short memories when it comes to not being hurt. They're forgetful, too. Despite the horror of the apocalypse catastrophe 20 years ago, where millions died, they seem to have forgotten the threat mutants pose, Alex reflected, feeling the need to remind them. Such actions would only drive mutants further into the abyss, Charles shook his head. Ah, not again, Charles, Alex sighed. Charles, however, seemed to be under an illusion. Taking the 3 youngsters with him, Alex addressed Charles. These 3 have stopped attending school lately. They'll stick close to me, as will Storm and Jean. No problem, Charles nodded. With Sentinels on the horizon, mutants were facing a precarious situation. Staying with Alex provided a measure of safety, much better than remaining at the current location. What kind of Sentinel can you handle? Kitty asked, her curiosity piqued. Sentinels can only really challenge 3rd-level mutants at best. Once you hit the 4th level, it's a whole different ballgame. And for me? Well, let's just say I'd make short work of it, Alex replied with a wry smile. True enough, with current technology, developing a Sentinel capable of taking on anything beyond a 3rd-level mutant is no easy feat, that's for sure. 3rd-level mutants are the backbone of the mutant side. But when it comes to folks like Charles, Eric, and others at the 4th level, it would take at least 5 to 10 Sentinels to hold them down. As for 5th-level mutants, well, these Sentinels wouldn't stand a chance. But Alex's true strength has remained hidden for many years. Only a handful of individuals like Jean, Charles, Eric, Psylocke, Angel, Storm, Summer, Quicksilver, and Hank know the real story behind how the apocalypse catastrophe was averted. As for the rest of humanity, all they know is that mutants prevented the disaster. The details of how it was stopped and who stopped it remain a mystery. Even SHIELD is in the dark, with only vague connections to Charles, Eric, and Alex. But it's all just speculation. The truth is shrouded in mystery, known to none. At the time, there were no witnesses left in Cairo. Everyone perished, leaving behind only pyramids in place of buildings, standing tall as silent witnesses to the cataclysm. End of this chapter. Chapter 134. The Devil. As time passed, the repercussions of Nick Fury's underestimation of Alex's abilities loomed ominously over the Sentinel's mission. New York City, typically bustling with activity, now exuded an eerie stillness, a deceptive calm that masked the impending storm brewing beneath the surface. Are you confident that these Sentinels can handle a mutant of Alex's caliber? Nick Fury's tone was measured, his gaze focused on the towering Sentinels below. His eyes betrayed a hint of doubt. While the Sentinels might prove effective against lower-level mutants, Fury envisioned a team of exceptional individuals like Carol, capable of confronting any threat head-on. Mutants represented a valuable asset in this vision, but their unpredictable loyalties posed a significant challenge. The recent approval of the Sentinel program by Congress marked a pivotal moment. Even if powerful mutants could be recruited, their allegiance remained uncertain. In such a scenario, the Sentinels stood as the last line of defense, a necessary evil in a world teetering on the brink of chaos. Nick Fury's strategy was sound, meticulously planned, yet flawed in its underestimation of the true might of 4th-level mutants. Apocalypse, the epitome of a 4th-level mutant, wielded unparalleled power capable of reshaping cities and manipulating even figures as formidable as Charles into triggering global catastrophe. Even in altered timelines, Charles foresaw only devastation, highlighting the overwhelming force posed by these mutants. The capabilities of a 4th-level mutant far exceed our current technology, Stryker admitted, acknowledging the immense challenge they faced. Individually, a single Sentinel may falter, but a coordinated unit of 5 or 6 can pose a formidable threat, he added, his voice tinged with uncertainty. Having never encountered a 4th-level mutant firsthand, Stryker grappled with doubts about the Sentinel's readiness for such a confrontation. When can we expect the full deployment of the 300 Sentinels? Nick Fury's inquiry was sharp, his demeanor betraying a sense of urgency despite his outward calmness. Barring any unforeseen complications, we can produce 10 Sentinels daily, completing the fleet in approximately a month, Stryker replied, his tone reflecting cautious optimism. 1 month. Nick Fury mused, weighing the timeline against the looming specter of impending conflict. Understood. Director. In 1 month's time, we'll initiate the deployment of 300 Sentinels as per your instructions, Stryker affirmed, his expression resolute as he absorbed Fury's strategic directives. Nick Fury's tactical acumen shone through in his meticulous planning, dividing the Sentinels into targeted groups, with a focus on neutralizing Charles's potential threat, showcased Fury's understanding of the power dynamics within the mutant community. Regarding Alex, Fury saw him not just as a formidable mutant but also as a delicate balance, a force that could tip the scales if mishandled. This insight led Fury to tread carefully, using Alex's presence as a deterrent rather than a direct target. Fury's astuteness extended to his perception of Charles's psyche. Aware of Charles's reluctance to intrude into others' minds, Fury calculated that their conversation today would remain confidential, shielding his plans from unwanted scrutiny. If Alex were to probe, Fury had a ready-made scapegoat in Stryker, deflecting blame onto the architect of the Sentinel program. This strategic maneuver showcased Fury's ability to manipulate situations to his advantage, leveraging the intricate web of alliances and rivalries within the mutant world. Despite Fury's meticulous planning, there lingered a hint of uncertainty regarding Alex's true potential. While categorized as a fourth-level mutant, Alex's subdued presence in comparison to figures like Eric and Charles hinted at hidden depths yet to be fully explored. Fury's initial focus on Alex stemmed from his role in safeguarding Stark's legacy, a task fraught with external pressures and potential threats. However, Fury's cautious approach to handling Miller's abilities underscored his awareness of the risks involved in underestimating seemingly lesser-known mutants. The strategic delay in targeting Alex allowed Fury to gauge his strength and assess potential outcomes before committing fully to a course of action. This calculated approach extended to leaving behind Sentinels for reconnaissance, gathering valuable intelligence on Alex's capabilities and alliances. Fury's schemes, while elaborate and ruthless, were tempered by a keen sense of pragmatism. If unable to match the forces at play, Fury understood the peril of being outmaneuvered and relegated to the ranks of casualties in a high-stakes game of power and survival. Chapter 135. Fury's Plans. As Alex contemplated resolving matters in the United States before journeying outside of Earth to explore the vast universe, Nick Fury made a significant discovery on his end. Director, you wanted detailed information on 1962. I've got some leads. Phil Coulson approached Nick Fury, holding a file. Really? Where did you find it? Fury inquired, visibly surprised. Despite S.H.I.E.L.D. not yet established in 1962, Fury sought to uncover details about the Cuban Missile Crisis, in which Alex was involved, aiming to gauge his strength. This file was tucked away in the old CIA archives. It took some digging to unearth it, Coulson explained with a hint of frustration. Following the Cuban Missile Crisis, many CIA personnel were replaced. It was a stroke of luck that Coulson stumbled upon these detailed records from 1962, which included information on Magneto, Charles, and Alex, detailing their abilities. Copy ability? Fury's brows furrowed as he read the files. Copying abilities? Now, that's a formidable power. Fury's eyes gleamed with intrigue. The ability to copy others' powers could be immensely powerful, allowing the user to replicate telekinesis, teleportation, magnetic manipulation, and more. It was clear that many of Alex's abilities might stem from this extraordinary capability to mimic others' powers. This copying ability still has its flaws. It requires physical contact to copy someone else's ability. Stryker's son, Jason, with his ability, could handle him well, Phil Coulson suggested. Jason. Nick Fury looked taken aback. So, this Stryker is also in the mix. He's quite the ruthless character. Jason is his son. Due to the brain fluid he produces, he can control people, even going so far as to open his head for easy access whenever needed. And Jason's ability to create illusions further complicates matters. Speaking of Stryker, he's quite the unfortunate soul. He initially harbored hatred towards mutants, only to have his own son turn out to be one. While this brought him immense grief, he couldn't bring himself to harm his own flesh and blood, could he? However, his wife met a tragic fate at the hands of their mutant son. This turned Stryker's resentment towards mutants into outright animosity. He promptly turned his son into a puppet, obeying only his commands. That's a solid plan, Nick Fury agreed. With Jensen's mastery of illusion, it shouldn't be too difficult to catch Alex off guard. Taking advantage of Alex's susceptibility to illusions, they could strike and eliminate him. No matter how formidable his ability might be, it's no match for death. Let's proceed with this plan and deal with Alex first. Both Charles and Magneto have their vulnerabilities, and we can tackle them one by one, Fury concluded. As Alex idly trimmed the trees in his manor, a sudden chill swept over him, signaling an unsettling sensation. Furrowing his brow, Alex sensed a malevolent presence targeting him. Stryker? Those Sentinels are no match for me. Who else would try to mess with me? Alex pondered, touching his nose, despite the lack of wind or cold weather. He couldn't shake the inexplicable chill, indicating something was amiss. Amusing, really amusing, Alex smirked. Unaware of Nick Fury's calculations, Alex remained unperturbed. His absolute strength rendered him indifferent to conspiracies and schemes. As a month passed uneventfully, an eerie peace settled over them. Meanwhile, Charles grew increasingly anxious amid the calm. His students were children, with only a handful capable of combat. The rest were too young and vulnerable. In contrast, Alex embraced the tranquility, indulging in love affairs, teasing the young girls, training Storm and Jean, and enjoying life as he pleased. On this particular day, as Alex strolled into his castle-like villa, Laughter echoed, seemingly from the three young girls. Jean and Storm conversed quietly, everything appearing normal. But Alex halted abruptly. Something felt off, too normal to be true. Even Jean and Storm's whispers seemed oddly faint, despite Alex's enhanced senses. This abnormality stirred a sense of unease within him. "My dear, what's the matter?" Raven descended the stairs, her expression filled with concern as she approached Alex. "It's nothing," Alex reassured her with a shake of his head, though his worry lingered. Outside the manor, a man in his 20s, confined to a wheelchair, was slowly wheeled closer to Alex's residence, his movements akin to someone afflicted with Parkinson's. It was Stryker. Sentinels descended upon the perimeter of Alex Manor, nearly 100 in number, gradually encircling the estate. Lost in his own thoughts, Alex was oblivious to the unfolding situation around him. P.S. I want to clarify why MC is oblivious. In the original book, Charles also remains unaware. He hasn't realized he's lost in his own fantasies, but the protagonist has sensed that something is amiss. This already addresses the issue. "Phil Coulson, your plan is still solid." Nick Fury observed the scene through surveillance, nodding in approval at Phil Coulson. Phil Coulson appeared conflicted. Director Nick Fury, Alex hasn't posed any threat to humanity. In fact, he's saved the world multiple times. Is it really wise for us to treat him like this? Agent Phil Coulson, if he were human, he'd be hailed as a hero, showered with accolades by the United States. But he's a mutant. Even if he saves the world, it doesn't change the fact that he's a mutant. "I'm not aiming to eradicate all mutants. I want to cultivate mutants who serve S.H.I.E.L.D., not those who refuse to abide by our rules. Do you understand?" Nick Fury explained patiently. "Why put in so much effort for these mutants? Is it all just for a handful of mutant kids?" "Well, mutant abilities come in many forms, and once they're brainwashed into becoming S.H.I.E.L.D. agents, they can be invaluable assets to the United States. Take Kitty, Anna, and Anya in Alex Manor, for example. Kitty's ability allows her to infiltrate any location and gather confidential information effortlessly. Anna can absorb the memories of others, eliminating the need for interrogation altogether. Just let Anna absorb the memories of enemy spies, and you'll have access to a wealth of information. Then there's Anya's ability. In wartime, she can use birds and even poisonous insects as scouts to spy on enemy positions and create detailed maps of their defenses. This is precisely why Eric, Charles, and Alex must be eliminated. Their abilities are incredibly valuable to the United States, and with various methods of brainwashing available, these mutants can be turned into agents contributing to the country's interests, much like Steve. Hence, dealing with these three mutant leaders is an unavoidable necessity. If they were to discover that SHIELD's true intention is to brainwash mutants into serving them, they would undoubtedly put up fierce resistance. It's better to take preemptive action. By eliminating the top three leaders, the remaining mutants would have no choice but to fall in line and work for S.H.I.E.L.D. End of this chapter.